All right, good evening, listeners, and welcome to Motley Crude, episode 16. I'm Kevin. With me this evening, I've got Andrew. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. And this week, unfortunately, Ryan can't join us, but we have a recurring guest coming in to fill his shoes. We've got Danny with us. How you doing, buddy? Danny, I think you might be muted.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Just keeping busy.
Awesome. Have you started working on your high elves yet?
Just been doing a bit of test schemes still, working that out, but slowly going.
Awesome. And do you have some pre-orders up for them, or?
Yeah, I got myself a Merworm and a Shy of S. Gonna be
Awesome.
going for the other list, the Seaguard list.
Awesome. We'll talk about that. I think next episode. Tonight we'll be discussing the Chracian Warhost in detail. So hopefully that's an interesting episode for everybody out there. Before we get to that, though, let's go around the table and see what's new with everybody's hobby. Since you were just talking there, Daniel, I'll go right back to you. What have you been up to over the last few weeks?
Over the last few weeks, it's just been trying to figure out what to do with elves and just waiting for the Arcane Journal to come out.
Yeah.
So I've just been test painting some elf models, trying some teals with the high elves instead of the regular blue,
Okay.
and then probably add a bit of orange in them. There's a province called Kothik. I'm probably going to spell or say that wrong.
Yeah, Kothik or whatever. I have no idea.
Yeah. But I kind of like their color scheme, so I'm going to be going for that. Other than that, I've been playing an OWL online event. Old World
Awesome.
Legends, I think it's called.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you're in there with me as well. So I've been playing in that with my demons and been doing all right. I played into dwarves yesterday, and with some bad plays, I had some blood crushers charge into a big block of longbeards by accident. They charged the flank of some iron drakes who fled, and then I was not able to hold, so they were forced to charge into something else.
Do they have do the blood crushers have impetuous or frenzy? I forget.
Impetuous.
Okay, yeah, it's
Yeah.
that's like especially bad in a game where you're just maneuvering and trying to save points because whoever engages is going to get is going to basically lose you the game, and then you've got a unit that decides to run off on its own. Like, it's not nearly as bad when it's one of those games where everybody's sort of smashing in the middle of the board, but when you're trying to play KG, it's a really big downside.
Yeah, it was a bit of a letdown because as soon as that went through, the Longbeards were over to overrun and then catch into one of my other units because they also had drilled, so they're able to kind of change the formation. And yeah, end up turning the game probably from like a 11-9, or I guess a 9-11 for me losing,
Okay.
to 15-5 for him. So
Ouch.
it was rough.
Ouch. All right. Andrew, what's new on your side of the house for hobby?
Not too much. I'm busy with work again. I finished a bunch of that Necromunda train I was working on,
Nice.
and now I'm working on some Dark Elf repeater crossbowmen that I built a while ago and just never got to yet.
Good stuff. And no games played, I imagine.
No, I don't think I'm gonna get realistically any games in until April after the NHL season at this point.
Yeah, and then after that, you're going to be preparing and running CHTT, and then we'll see you after, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess right into starting to work on Capital City Bloodbath as well.
Yeah, you've got a busy lineup of events coming up.
Yeah.
Awesome. On my end, I've been quite busy from a painting perspective. I've gotten a lot done. So since the last episode, I got a unit of 10 Marauder Berserkers all painted up and good to go. I got the first 3 Skin Wolves also painted and ready to rock. So that's good stuff. And then I've started now on some Marauder Horsemen. which will at least I'll have one unit done by the next episode, I'm sure. And then from a gaming perspective, I also played 2 games in the online tournament that myself, Cleary, and Danny are in. I won both my games. So first one was into Bretonians, and then my second one was into Orcs and Goblins. Like the Bretonian one was a pretty solid win for the Chaos Dwarfs, and then the Orcs and Goblin matchup was a really tight game. It ended in a win for me for 11-9, and that was despite the best efforts of my army to try to get me to lose. I have my Sorcerer Prophet miscast twice and gave himself 2 wounds to kill, and then just ended up nuking himself over 2 successive turns. But regardless of that 400-point swing, I still managed to claw away a close victory there. So I'm pretty happy with that. And so that brought me to the top 5 for round 5. And I met up with friend of the podcast, Cleary, and we're gonna be matched up for the next game. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, and then I think Danny, we have one more round after. Right? It's 6 rounds this event.
Yeah, there's 6 rounds. They changed it on round 2 or 3. They decided to make it 6 rounds.
Yeah, because they wanted to ensure that there was like a single undisputed sort of champion. But yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so let's move on here. We have a little bit of news this week. So the first thing from a news perspective is there's obviously been all the Warcom articles surrounding the new High Elf book. Unfortunately, because everything in the book has been leaked, I guess the articles are kind of overtaken by events at this point. So we're not really going to go into much detail there. But I still want to give you guys just a quick chance to shout out anything from the Warcom articles that you thought was interesting, or that sort of that you guys want to share with the audience. Do you have anything on your end, Andrew?
Not specifically, but I do want to shout out like the studio because I think it was just before Christmas we were lamenting how little coverage Old World gets, like in the Warhammer community page and stuff, and it just seems like since Christmas time, it's been at least 1 or 2 articles a week, and then
Agreed.
with the lead up to the High Elf book, it's been like every couple days or something. So like it's a bit. We went from like this huge dry spell to like a great deluge of just like good content and coverage for Old World. So it's really nice to see and helps like build up hype for me again, knowing that GW remembers that it's a game they make.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and I think for me, like the turning point was at the release after the release of like Warriors of Chaos. Everything just picked up after that, and like the articles started increasing. The new models that they were previewing started to increase also. So I think it's just picking up a lot of pace. Good. Danny, on your end, anything you want to shout out from the different articles that GW published?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I don't know if you guys did talk about the frogs last episode or not.
We didn't. They hadn't been previewed
Yeah.
yet.
So there is the frog, which I guess was an old, potentially prototype model they never fully released. I know it's in the catalog, but listening to other people mention it wasn't available and never actually officially released.
Mhm.
So that's something. It's a kind of fun little miniature.
Yeah, for sure.
In the article for what's in the Arcane Journal, looking through different people's perspective of it, if you look at the Trace army that they preview,
Yeah.
they're actually using Dark Elf bits.
Really?
There's a Dark Elf banner for the Dread Spears, yeah, for the High Elf unit in the background. But they also have conversions in there, like they're taking parts from the White Lion kit on their Spearmen. So it's actually kind of nice to see the studio army actually having conversions.
Yeah, for
And their
sure.
things, and not just sticking to what's in the kit, which is nice.
That's
And
cool. Go ahead.
And I guess there's 2 other little things. There was talk of the Stormweaver. I think it was in the same article,
Yeah.
saying it was going to have its own lore, which I think we'll get to later. Turned out to be wrong.
Yeah, that was a bit misleading. Everybody was waiting for it, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they also mentioned one mini they never showed off, which was the Stormweaver having a model coming back. which I've seen a lot of people speculating which model it's going to be, and it sounds like it's the one from 1993, so it's quite an old one.
Oh
But
yeah,
we'll
is that
find out.
that's the one you sent me a picture of, eh?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
the high elf
On a
on the
unicorn. Yeah,
unicorn. Yeah, the
yeah, that's
unicorn's okay. The rider, not so much.
yeah. That one's a little bit too like derp hammer aesthetics for me personally,
Yeah,
but if that's what
maybe
you
a
have,
modern paint job could help it, but I don't think.
yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
so, bud.
yeah, probably
I
not.
think yeah, it's probably irredeemable from that perspective, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but
but some
that's all.
people like that aesthetic, eh? So
Yeah, I have some old models. I have the old Ice Queen from back in the same time era, and she paints up
nice.
all right. Her face is still same thing. It's hand sculpted faces back then were a little rough,
Yeah,
but they're generally pretty good.
yeah. I have.
Is she
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
is she like your retirement fund?
Yeah, the entire Kislev army I have, yes. I
Yeah.
spent most of 2020 deciding I needed to purchase the Kislev army to paint 2 units of it, and then never do anything with them since.
Every time somebody talks about an old model retirement fund, I just die a little bit inside because each and every single old model purchase I've made, GW's brought back, and I've just like
Well, you knew they were coming out. You had to sell when the stocks are
exactly.
high.
I should have
Yeah.
sold, but no, I just kept it. Yeah, it's been a financial disaster. So
So if you have any wood elves you want to get rid of, sell them before.
uh,
Wood
I
elves and beastmen. Oh, beastmen I guess have been around. So wood elves, sell them
so
while hot.
I got an incredible deal on 4 boxes, like new boxes of Glade Guard. So I picked them up, and I wasn't super planning to do a Wood Elf army. I may or may not, depending on what the Army of Infamies like sort of shape out to be. But I bought them. I received the 4 boxes, and then the day after, they announced the nerf to Sisters of the Thorn, and I was like, "Oh boy, this is brutal timing." Like my track record of incredibly bad Warhammer purchases just keeps getting longer.
Well, as long as you're not buying 3 units of Sisters of the Thorn, you'll be
I
fine.
haven't, but like
Okay, so
no
you're good.
jokes. It was the next thing I was looking to get because I was like, well, everybody needs Sisters of the Thorn because otherwise the Wood Elf list is kind of it's kind of in a rough spot. You got a dragon, Sisters of the Thorn, and a bunch of like Deepwood Scouts. So thankfully I didn't buy them though. So we'll see what comes out in the Army of Infamy
Yeah.
with the Arms of Infamy. Okay, and on my end for the articles, like I was also going to shout out the cool little frogs that they brought back. So thanks for that, Danny. The other thing I wanted to shout out was we've had a lot of discussions both on this podcast and then privately I've talked with Ryan a ton about this, but the whole discussion surrounding the arcane journals and people all over the internet being sort of upset with what with what the journals are doing for their armies, or just finding that the journals are like kind of a bit of a dud. But then myself and Ryan and Andrew, I think, like not necessarily agreeing with that point of view. And then there was a quote from JTY in one of the articles last week, which was, theme, and I'll quote now, like, theme is the main reason we write these armies of infamy, with each encouraging its players to adapt to a more limited list by maximizing on the army's unique tricks. And then it was kind of a moment I thought that the whole world could be like, okay, so this is what they're actually doing. These are not codexes, these are not battle tomes, they're not rewriting the army, they're not give it, it's not a case of, oh, I hope I get a good codex this time. No, this is totally not the purpose of the arcane journals, and I'm just glad that the studio put it out there. I don't think it's going to cut down on the debate at all, but anyways, I'm happy that it's out there. Okay, so moving on a little bit, we have some rumors that we've heard over the last 10 days, which we're going to be totally irresponsible and share with the broader audience now. So rumors surrounding the Wood Elf book, and especially the Armies of Infamy that are in that book. So again, as we did the last time, I'm just going to caution this with, I have no way of verifying anything that I'm about to say, but things that we did here last time did pan out. So, take that for what it's worth. So basically we have 3 pieces of information here. So regarding the first Army of Infamy in the Wood Elf book, it's a wild Hunt themed Army of Infamy led by a returning Orion. Orion's is supposedly like a super extreme badass kick-ass level of close combat power, and the Wild Hunt list is focused on close combat allegedly. I'm not entirely sure how you're going to do that with the current Wood Elf list, but that's what we've heard. The second Army of Infamy is centered on the Elves of Lorelorn Forest, or the Eonir, as they call themselves. This is like a Wood Elf enclave. It's technically like its own kingdom, but that resides in like the north, or that is physically in the northern portion of the Empire. So that list is centered more around your traditional skirmishing Wood Elf archetype. An important fact, or an important thing that we've heard also that I think sort of a lot of people are waiting for, is it appears that there's no tree spirit focus list, and there's not a lot of tree spirits being pushed forward as part of these two armies of infamy. Apparently, the tree spirits are quite thematically aligned with the Sylvaneth of AOS, and they've been sort of pushed into that product line rather than being pushed for Wood Elves and Old World. So I think we can say that they are the latest casualty in the SDS slash regular game studio civil war going on. Anyways, that's what we've heard for Wood Elves. Any thoughts on this? I'll start with Danny.
For me as a demon player, I'm really excited to see Orion, just to see like how powerful he is. If he is going to be similar to what the other greater demons were, or maybe what they could have been, more likely. But either way, I'm really excited. For like the Wild Hunt, I can easily see Wild Riders maybe 0 to 1 for core.
For sure, yeah.
Even if there's a more elite version of Wild Riders, just better stats, or maybe they don't have Frenzy, they have a different rule. So I feel like that's a high possibility.
Yeah.
But for the Dryads, they're still like Dryads themselves are still a part of the AOS range. So they're still like, unless they get new models, I can see why they haven't put any pictures of Dryads and any of the pictures of Wood Elves. Like they put Treekin, they've put the old metal Treemen, but yeah, the plastic ones are still there. So potentially that means if you're AOS fan, maybe you'll be getting new Dryad models.
Yeah.
But there's also the possibility Chaos Warriors and Slaves of Darkness they're still sharing the Chariot kit. That's still in both, and because of that, it's online only, direct only, and I'm sure it comes with the usual Chariot base / round base for it. So I'm still kind of excited to see what actually happens with Dryads.
Yeah, maybe they'll get a new kit, or as you mentioned, they may just bring back an older version of the kit. But you're right that like Dryads are still very much at the center of the Sylvaneth line in AOS, so I think they're really anchored in that game system for sure.
Yeah, I don't want them to bring back those old metal ones. Like they don't really fit the same aesthetic as the metal Treekin and Treeman, because they're kind of all came out the same time frame.
Yeah.
So I'd be surprised if they brought those ones back.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see soon. But I think like both of those armies of infamy sound well. Like for sure, the Elves of Lorelorn Forest, and then like the Wild Hunt, which is like outside the borders of Athaloran, means that like in both cases, just the trees won't be a big part of it thematically or like from a lore perspective. So I can understand them not playing a big part in this. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on this Wood Elf stuff?
Nothing too crazy. Like I am really excited to see Orion because I feel like that's going to be a very different piece for the Wood Elves than what they already have. And like just between the three elf armies, something that's going to help set them apart even more from the other two, other than just being like, oh, we're the studio elves. Like it'll be something that makes them a little bit more unique. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I find it weird though that we're getting like Wood Elf rumors before any Beastman stuff, because Beastman was, or
It
is
is the
supposed to
next
be.
book. Yeah, it
So
is.
you'd think there'd be more like rumors for that stuff than wood elves, which probably it won't be until like the summertime, if not later.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't I'm not sure I can explain why. Like the only thing that we've already discussed this, Andrew, but the only thing that we've heard for Beastmen is that the Minotaur Army of Infamy is a thing in that book. But I like aside from that, I haven't seen, read, or heard anything related to that book yet. So I don't know. But you're right, it is the next book. So we should have more information on it. So yeah, on my end, for like these rumors, so I think you're bang on there, Danny, for the wild hunt stuff. Like I agree with some of the things you put out there in terms of like army construction, and then I'll also be interested to see how Orion shakes out because I think the comparison you made with demon with a greater demon there is kind of apt because Orion, like from a lore perspective and the vibe that I get, he's very much like this force of nature character that rises up periodically and then just sort of like a big bow wave leaves Athel Loren and then just goes to kick some ass. So I think that's a good comparison and it'll be interesting to see. And then I'm really interested to see the Aeonir or the other elves there. So from like a lore perspective to sort of inform that list design, that kingdom is much less insular than like the elves of Athel Loren, and it does have diplomatic relations with the Empire, with like Nordland and Middenheim. So, or Midland actually. So it's so that'll be interesting to see if there's some sort of crossplay with Empire units, perhaps as mercenaries or something. And then also one of the big things in the lore for these guys is they have I think they're called ghost stalkers as like just a very elite, skirmishing wood elf type unit. So that'll be interesting to see if they also make it in the book. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to our main subject. Let's talk high elves. So before we get into the Warhost of Chrace, let's talk about the book in general. So I'm going to ask you guys, starting with Andrew, how do you feel about the Arcane Journal, the High Elf Arcane Journal overall? Do you like what it brings to the table? Do you think it opens up new playstyles for the faction? And how do you see it like in comparison to the other Arcane Journals? Like, is it a hit or a miss? So Andrew.
Well, just starting off, I do think it's a hit. You have two like fairly viable armies that have their own sort of distinctive feel on how they play on the board. Um, Especially getting that Trace army, like I think that's something fans of High Elves and just Warhammer Fantasy in general have really been wanting for many, many years. So finally being able to field that specific province's army uh, with their own special rules and like really cool and thematic units, like I think that's huge. As well as the Seaguard army as well has its own distinct theme, and it really sets it apart from sort of the base high elf list. So I think this is a hit because both armies are really good and they both have their own specific themes. And I guess other than the Trace army, like it's not just the base list, but a little bit better. It's not like I can, we didn't get that generic. Here's my oops all cav list that arguably maybe the base list could have probably done better, like we saw with the Chaos book.
Yeah.
These are two very distinct things that are separate from that base list.
Yeah. So I think so I agree with you, Andrew. In general, I really like the book overall. I think there's some really fun items for high elf players out there to sort of get their paws on and include in their armies. Sorry, I like how thematic both the lists are. I think they really nailed it, as they've generally been doing with like just the armies of infamy from like a cool way to design your army and a cool narrative theme to sort of run with perspective for sure. I'm probably going to shock you a little bit here, Danny. I know it's what you're going for. I think the Seaguard list is fun, but probably not super competitive. Like, I think its damage output really struggles, and then not having the utility of level 4s and not having the big beat stick that the dragons are kind of makes it I think competitively it's not going to be that strong of a list. Like, I'm super willing and ready to be proven wrong on that, but that's sort of like my hot take. And then I think, but on the other hand, I think the Chracian Warhost, which we're going to cover this evening in detail, I think that list has a lot of legs. And I've been thinking about it over the last few days. I think it's probably, I would call it a side grade to the Grand Army. I don't see it as being better. I think in the fullness of time, the Grand Army is probably still going to be what you're going to see more often, and is probably what's going to be more competitive. For many reasons, including that, like, converting up an entire army of like white line themed models is like a pretty big hobby project. But regardless, I think that there's some real good competitive tools in the Chracian list, which we're going to cover later. So I really like that army of infamy. I think the journal is a strong one in terms of just like the overall work that's been accomplished by the studio. You don't have a mortuary cults or exiles list in here, obviously, so it's not that kind of book if that's what you're looking for. But regardless, I'd still qualify it as a hit from my perspective. I think it's a solid book. What are your thoughts on this one as our resident high elf player, Danny?
Well, I wouldn't consider myself a resident high elf player yet. I think I've had one game maybe with them so far, and that was a few months ago.
Okay,
So
a budding high elf player.
Yeah. So either way, I'm still excited to play them. Do see how some people are quite disappointed. Not having, like, both lists are quite thematic, but as you said, like, I feel like most people are still going to stick to the Grand Army. Um, the Arcane Journals just seem to always take all these new special units and then still give them to the Grand Army, which I always kind of disappointed with. Like, I'd rather have more reason to take them. Like, oh, if you really want to take a Merworm, you have to
Yeah.
take the Army of Infamy. Versus,
Mhm.
oh no, you just add a small unit of Seaguard and you can still take it.
Yeah.
Like, there are some units that we'll discuss later that are still standard to it, but I feel like even with Chaos Warriors, when that one came out, you
Yeah.
had the Giant Chaos Spawn, which just kind of seemed to be in every list now. Everyone gets it.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish that would lock more things to the list, just to kind of force you to, if you do want to play with those toys, you have to play the certain list. But otherwise, like, the items in it, I think there's a lot of fun items. The two lists do seem fun. If you like lions, want to go for that white lion theme, there's a ton of them.
And
Different
who doesn't
options.
like lions, frankly?
Yeah, it's great. And then even with the Seaguard list, like, it's pretty much an updated version of the one from the Storm of Chaos from back in the day, which is exciting for me as someone who kind of wanted to run that list back in the day. Excited to kind of recreate it now in the old world instead of 6th edition, where I feel like both versions were pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
But either way, yeah, excited to put some elves on the table.
Yeah, I think like, if nothing else, you're going to get very, very good at controlling and winning through the movement phase if you end up running that army for sure. So, like, it's gonna like it's an army that will feel good when you win, because it'll be wholly based on like player skill, I think.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, so let's I'll just give everybody a brief reminder of how we structure these Army of Infamy reviews, and then after that we'll jump right in. So obviously we're going to start by talking about the Chracian Warhost in terms of the army composition and then the rules. After that, we'll talk about all the new unit entries. That includes like Core Hill, the Chieftains, their wagons, the Woodsmen, Warlines, and the Lion Guard. The Stormweaver is also part of this list, but I think it's much more relevant in the Seaguard detachment. So we're just going to park the Stormweaver and cover him next episode. And then finally, we're going to, after that, close out with the magic items and specific. So the general magic items, and then magic items specific to the Chracian Warhost. So without further ado, let's look at army overview and composition. So I know we did talk about this in sort of our overall remarks, but just I'll pass the ball back to you, Danny, to see if you have any other comments on specifically this Army of Infamy. Do you think it's thematic? Do you think it's fun? Do you think it brings something new to the table? Does it open up a new play style or whatever else you're thinking for this army? Over to you, Danny.
Yeah, sorry, I was just turning my mic off.
Okay.
So I do think it's a fun list. It still runs into the issue of what High Elves had for a long time, which is they have a lot of elite infantry.
Yeah.
And this list continues with that. There's no cavalry, which would be the first thing I'm thinking of. But I still think people are going to have a lot of fun with the list in their own way.
Okay, awesome. So from my perspective, so I think it's a super thematic. Like obviously, it's a very thematic list, and it's also a fun list. It has a lot of good tools. Being able to bring level 4s and quote unquote Lord level characters in an Army of Infamy is one of the big important items for it to be, I think, like really significant competitive wise. So there's that. I like that I think the Chracian Warhost especially brings sort of a pretty big spin on what you typically see out of high elf lists. So, most high elf lists that you'll run into right now have one dragon, have the strength 7 dragon usually will have a level 4 caster on either a chariot or flying around type situation. They'll have sisters of Averlorn, sorry, and then they'll have probably some smattering of different sort of cavalry units in there. I think what the Chracian Warhost does is it moves the needle a little bit more, for me anyways, into sort of a wood elf play style, where you have a lot of good skirmishers, skirmish shooting happening with the woodsmen, I think, which are an excellent unit. Spoiler alert. The positive side, obviously, is that when they do get charged, or when this army does get charged, it's very competent in close combat also. So just going back to my wood elf analogy, you get a lot of bow shots between the woodsmen and the Sisters of Averlorn, and then you have the big dragons still that you could take to sort of create that wood elf feel to the army, I'm going to say. So it is definitely a departure from what you see most high elf players running right now. And then you can add in there a big honking brick of white lions and core, which just I think makes for a very cool and interesting army from a design perspective. I think it's going to also be quite competitive, as I mentioned earlier. What are your thoughts on this one, Andrew?
I think you guys have nailed most of it. The only thing is, like, I think it's not going to be as competitive as probably you want it to be. Just not having access to a lot of cav, other than like your chariots or characters mounted. I think it's just going to hurt it with being able to have like decent board control. You're going to be really relying on like your chariots and the lions, whatever they're called, the foot lions, not attached to the chariot to do a lot of like your board control stuff. And you are just kind of relying on those blocks of units. Now you do have a lot of skirmishers and stuff to harass other units, but you really kind of need, like, elves need that like sort of quick being able to get into combat or pick your combats easily. And I feel like this list might struggle a bit if you are relying on sort of like spearmen and the white lions unit themselves. So I don't know. I guess I'll have to see it in action, but I just feel like it's going to struggle against, say, like a Brett army or like just like an all cav army.
Yeah. So there's like I have a few thoughts here. So first thing is, like, from a board control perspective, I think we'll talk about it in like the army rules shortly, but like being able to drop a massive pie plate of difficult terrain in the middle of the board, presumably with this army, to slow down your opponent's movement, to slow down their or make their charges more difficult. Just gives you like board control through limiting your enemy's mobility rather than just being mobile yourself. So that'll definitely play in their favor. Like I'm not entirely sold on, and this is like a personal opinion slash game situation like opinion here, but I'm not totally sold on high elf cav as it is. Like silver helms are just kind of like worse knights of the realm, and I think they're a bit of a trap, frankly. Like with the magic items that are available in this book, that may change a little bit, but nobody would say that Bretonnians would suddenly become a bad army if Knights of the Realm no longer existed, right? I guess they have two other sort of varieties of almost identical knights, but like I think you understand my point there. Like that army doesn't really rest on the Knight of the Realm, so I think it's kind of the same thing here for this one. And I'll just go back to like my wood elf sort of analogy here, because what you see typically in wood elves right now is not a lot of cavalry. You just see skirmish shooting, long range shooting, and then the big centerpiece model to go in and sort of tie down big parts of the enemy army. And I think the Chracian Warhost can replicate that playstyle quite well, with some like aspects being better. So strength 4 shooting, for instance, is like a big plus. And then on the other hand, some other aspects not being as good. For instance, no poison shooting, right? So I'll be interested to see how it settles competitively, but I don't think just losing the Cav is going to be as bad as like when you look at it at face value. But we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. Do you have any other thoughts on this, Andrew? Or
No, that was basically it. Like you guys kind of hit the other major points for this.
Okay, perfect. So I'll turn it over to you, Danny, to walk us through army composition, and then like the list, and then if you have any comments on it.
Yep. All right. So for characters, you get up to 50% of your points can be spent on 0 to 1 High Elf Prince or Archmage per 1,000 points. 0 to 1 Chracian Chieftain or Stormweaver per 1,000 points, and then as many High Elf Nobles as you want. In core, you have to take 33% of your army's points, so a little extra than the normal 25. But you have Elven Spearmen, Elven Archers, and then the new Chracian Woodsmen. And as well, you get 0 to 1 White Lions of Trace per 1,000 points. Special, you can spend 50% of your army on White Lions of Trace, Lion Chariots of Trace, and 0 to 1 War Lions per 1,000 points. And then in rare, you get 33%, so you get a few extra points to spend on your rare, which can be used on 0 to 1 Line Guards, so only one unit of them. 0 to 1 unit of Shadow Warriors or Sisters of Avalorn per 1,000 points. 0 to 2 Great Eagles per 1,000 points, and 0 to 1 Eagle Bolt Thrower per 1,000 points. And then as well, for the Battle Standard Bearer, you can make either High Elf Noble or Chracian Chieftain as your BSB. So for me, the big change, again, the Chieftain is a nice change for your BSB. We'll go into him a bit more. Like, he's a little tankier than the normal one. You are paying a bit extra, but I think he's worth it. I am still surprised you can only take 0 to 1 War Lions per 1,000 points. So you're really only getting 2 units.
Yeah.
And your 2,000 points. And I guess you might run them as minimum squads just for more harassers or getting up on the flanks, because they are still pretty quick. They're pretty much your only cavalry unless you take Great Eagles. But I don't think Great Eagles are that great since they are closed order. So they're not as maneuverable as the Lions are. But generally, there's no cav in the list. You get a lot of shooting. So the big change for, I guess, some people would be, White Lions in core. Your Sisters of Avalorn have no way of becoming core. They're still in rare. But you get 33% of your rare, so you can spend still get a pretty big unit in your rare slot.
Yeah.
Which is nice. That's all I got for now.
Awesome. Any comments on, what are your thoughts on army composition there, Andrew?
I do like that they're playing with the percentages again. It makes for more interesting army lists. It does feel a little bit restrictive. You know, like Danny said, limiting the amount of warline units you can take seems kind of like a myth. You wanted them limited, maybe they should have been something in rare and then move something up from rare into special.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, if, as you said, you want to lean into that sort of like skirmish and shoot style army, it kind of sucks that both the Shadow Warriors and Sisters share a unit slot or whatever I guess you would call it. I think it'd be a little bit better if those were split up and
Sure.
maybe even like Shadow Warriors moved into special. I think that would allow you to lean more heavily into that sort of avoidance shooting army.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It seems okay. Like, I don't really have any strong opinions other than that. What about you,
Yeah.
Ryan? Or
Kevin. Yeah. So
Kevin?
yeah, just a few thoughts here. So I kind of agree with you that limiting war lions is a bit of a strange one. Like they're not even that good of a piece. Like they're not. It's not because they're like your super powerful item in the army, and we'll talk about them later. Like they have use case, but it is limited. So I don't really see a requirement to do that. Aside from that, like 33% core is usually a big, like, sort of yikes, no situation in the armies of infamy. In this one, though, it's not, I think, as bad because you do have access in core there to the Chracian Woodsman, which, like, again, double spoiler alert, I think are probably the strongest single unit in this book. Like the new book that have been added. So that doesn't bother me too much. I think if you with the 33%, if your local meta is doing the rule of 3 where it could be 6 for core units and then 3 for everything else, you're probably in a really, really good space because taking up to 6 small units of woodsmen is really going to, like, be a strong sort of setup. If you're limited to 3, I think, like, I did do some test lists and I did limit myself to 3, and it still works, but you end up having to take like a big brick of white lines, which is not terrible. Like, but you do end up having to take that, I think, because, like, let's be honest, you're certainly never taking spearmen, and then the archers are, I mean, they fill up points, but they're not doing much more. So there is that for the core tax in this case. I mean, being able, as I mentioned earlier, to take level 4s, and then just frankly, the Star Dragon is amazing for the Army of Infamy, and that alone will probably carry some or patch over some of the sort of weaker spots here. And then I think, as you mentioned, Andrew, being able to have 33% rare in this case is actually pretty good because you do have Sisters of Avalorn in there, which are like one of the staples for the army. So in the list that I ended up making and playing around with, I had 2 units of Sisters of Avalorn in there. You could do one big unit if you want, but I think I had 2 units of 15, or maybe it was 20. But anyways, in the 15 to 20 range, which will put out a really strong amount of firepower, even without like having access to the Horn of Isha. So I think, yeah, I really like the rare slot basically for the Sisters. And then, I mean, special, yeah, it's 50%, but the only thing you're really going to take there is War Lions and maybe a lion or two, a lion chariot or two, but that's not going to take up 50% of the army. So, yeah, so those are my thoughts on on the list construction. So moving on, let's talk about the special rules for the Army of Infamy. So we're going to be doing, there's 4 different rules. We're going to be doing these individually. I'll start with Danny, over to you for Chracian Pride.
All right. So characters in a Chracian Warhost of Army of Infamy that are able to take Elven Honor may only choose one of the following: Shadowstalker, Chracian Hunter, and Pureheart. It's pretty much just limiting you to the 3, which Shadowstalker allows you to join the Shadow Warriors. Pureheart, I feel like, is usually the auto take. It also, if you're taking it on a Prince or Archmage, it still lets you take the Dragon, because as soon as you take the Chracian Hunter, you're locked to being on foot or on the Lion Chariot. So I feel like a lot of people are going to be taking the Pure of Heart on your Prince, or even a Noble. That way you still have access to all of its regular mounts. I don't really see any time you're going to be taking the Shadow Stalker.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still fun. You're able to scout with stuff, and there are some items that I think could be useful with it as well. So over to you, Kevin.
Yeah, I think for me this one is a bit of like a non-rule. I get that it like feeds into the theme of the army, but as you mentioned, I think correctly, Danny, you're almost never gonna see Shadow Stalker being taken on any characters just because of how the list is built and what you want to do with this army. Then what's gonna happen is because of the restrictions on Chracian Hunter, like you're gonna see that that Elven Honor being taken on characters that are gonna be embedded with like White Lions in some way. Otherwise, everybody's just going to default back to Pure of Heart, which is what the vast majority of high elf characters take anyways. So, like, yeah, I guess for me it's a bit of a non-rule, right? At least you get the option of putting other characters in the White Lion units, and then aside from that, it's back to Pure of Heart for everybody. So, yeah, not too impactful from my perspective. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah, like I think you might see Chracian Hunter a bit if you're putting like a character on um, a Lion Chariot,
Sure. Yes.
just
Yeah.
to give him a cool weapon. He's immune to any sort of killing blow, and just kind of have him go around and smash into
Yeah.
shit that maybe your units got caught into a fight they shouldn't have been. But yeah, I think everyone's just gonna sort of default to Pure of Heart so they can have access to that dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't very clear, Andrew, there. So I think the only characters who can go on the new Chieftain chariots actually already come with Chracian Hunter. So like the Chieftains and Corhill count as having that Elven Honor. So yes, you'll see that come up on the chariots too, but it's like already baked in.
Right, but even like the base Lion Chariot, like say you're taking a noble,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and you want to give
Can
him
you?
like a mount. Tracy and Hunter, yeah, it unlocks
It unlocks the
work
mount? Okay.
the
Yeah, it
Lion
unlocks
Chariot as a
the
mount.
regular chariot.
Okay, fair.
Yeah,
Cool.
you can't take the fancy one, but you can take the regular one, which is still a pretty fucking decent chariot.
Yeah.
Um,
Which frankly is fancier than the new one, but we'll get to that later. Yeah.
yeah, so that was all I'm really saying. Otherwise,
Okay.
you want the pure heart so you can take a dragon, right?
Yeah, for sure. And get those rerolls too. So, okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one, Hidden Trails here. So Hidden Trails, it's basically like two rules in one. So the first one is, 0 to 1 unit of Elven Spearmen or Archers per 1,000 points within this Army of Infamy may have the Move Through Cover special rule for +1 point per model. We'll get to why like move through cover is important in this army shortly, but I think because you're not going to see many Elven Spearmen at all, actually you're not going to see at all, I think, Elven Spearmen, and you may sometimes see some Elven Archers. It's not going to be too impactful, but the second part I think is more interesting. So in addition, once per game after rolling to determine if a unit of ambushers with the ambushers special rule that is currently held in reserve as reinforcement arrives, you may apply a +1 or a -1 modifier to that result. So obviously, whenever you have ambushing units, being able to take +1 or a -1 to that result is just makes it so much more reliable. So definitely rate that. That's something that's going to come into play with the Woodsman unit when we get to that later. Any thoughts on this rule, starting with Andrew?
As you said, like the first part, I don't think is a big deal because you're not going to be seeing many of those units anyway. The second part, though, it is kind of huge, I think. Some armies you have to buy a whole character just to get this ability. So
Yeah.
to just have it baked in as like a base rule, I think is really nice.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of choice in this list that you might be like, maybe I will keep them in ambush. And then you just have that more control over when they do or do not come in. So I think it's really good.
Yep. Thoughts on this one, Danny?
Yeah, the first part seems a little lackluster. It would be nice if it could have been taken on some other units, maybe the Sisters or the Shadow Warriors, or just I guess that's pretty much the only options that don't already have it for the most part.
Mhm.
The second part, yeah. For me, I'm pretty jealous of that, building into a Seaguard list.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wish we had this, but it's great with. I had to double check what even had ambushers, and it's one of the new units.
Yeah, it's the
So
woodsman. Yeah,
yeah, which makes them even better. The fact that they get a bonus to it.
yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew, you want to take us through Warriors of Chrace?
Yeah. Warriors of Trace. Uh, Units of Elven Spearmen or Elven Archers with within the Chracian Warhost army of Infamy can have a Lion Cloak or get the Lion Cloak special rule for 10 points per unit. That's pretty good value.
Yeah.
So does that mean if I take a big block of like spearmen, I just pay
Yep.
10 points and they all get the cloak? That's
Yep.
pretty good fucking value.
It is.
And it helps tie in sort of that overall theme of the army as well. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. If you're taking large block, well, even if you're not, you take 10 archers, that's essentially 1 point per model.
Yep.
So that's a pretty sweet rule.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess from my perspective, it's like I don't think, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think you're going to see these units much. So, whatever, it's a bit of a non-rule from that perspective. That being said, I agree with you, Andrew. There's very few things in the game that are like unit upgrades that are costed on a by unit basis. So seeing that as like a flat upgrade to the unit is pretty cool. But I mean, aside from that, I don't think it's going to massively come into play. What are your thoughts on this one, Danny?
I'm just thinking of a big block unit of like 30 spearmen. Take that extra point for move through cover, the extra 10 points for the Lion Cloak, and you have a really expensive unit. Like 10 points is
Yeah.
great, but it's
Yeah.
still like on spearmen, which are a little lackluster these days.
Yeah.
I would really like it. It's great modeling opportunity because you get to add those Lion Cloaks if you wanted to spend the time converting cloaks on them, or even converting the White Lion models themselves into spearmen.
Yeah.
But Lion Cloaks also, they're only +1 save to range now, compared to older editions, and it's against non-magical attacks.
Mhm.
So your spearmen are going from a 5 up to a 4 up, and archers, if you didn't buy that light armor, they just have a 6 up save. So I guess if you're bringing in a big unit of archers, it'd be cheaper to buy the Lion Cloak than light armor. If you brought a unit of 20 archers, or even more than 10, it's just cheaper to get the Lion Cloak.
Mhm.
So you have some defense for range. I mean, even if they get hit in combat, they're probably dead.
Yeah.
So I still see you probably aren't taking them. Probably aren't adding them.
No, not when they come in the same slot as the woodsman.
Yes, again, the woodsman.
We'll get to them. They're amazing. Okay, cool. So the last rule that we have here is Warriors of the Wilderness. So once players have finished placing terrain, a Chracian Warhost player may place one additional area of difficult terrain measuring between 8 and 12 inches at its widest point. This may be placed anywhere on the battlefield that is not within their opponent's deployment zone and not within 6 of a special feature. Note that unlike most terrain features, this piece of terrain can be placed within 12 inches of the center of the battlefield, unless the presence of a special feature like the tower or whatever precludes this. So I think this is actually a really impactful rule. Being able to just drop a, let's call it 12 inches wide piece of terrain, because like the dimensions here are not super well defined in terms of like what's its length, but anyway, so let's call it a big sort of piece of 12 inches wide of difficult terrain in the middle of the board. It's really impactful because it slows down your enemy's movement when they charge you. They have to pick the lowest dice, which definitely hurts. It reduces their movement by 1, which also hurts. And then when they're fighting within the terrain, they're going to count as being disordered, so they'll lose a rank bonus, which is also great. And then most of your army on the reverse side does have moves through cover. So I mean, when you add those two together, you get, I think, just the ability to screw with your opponent's movement. especially if you're playing with terrain as it's laid out in the base rule book, where you have to leave this big empty area in the center of the board, which leads to like both armies meeting in the center in 9 out of 10 games. And then if you're able to just blanket cover that center of the board with difficult terrain, it really impacts how the game plays. So I think this has the potential to be like one of the most impactful aspects of this army. Like it's easy to sleep on it, but I think when you start using it in games, you'll realize that it does matter a whole lot to how the army's played. So what are your thoughts on this one, Danny?
For me, big thing is difficult terrain. If you're in difficult terrain as an open order unit, you're not losing your ranks, correct?
Yeah, you don't. I'll need to double. Yeah, I think you're not
Yeah.
impacted by that. You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's bonuses as well for that for your main unit of white lines. It's probably in your core,
Yeah.
which I think is great. As well, like I was just looking through move through cover, like you still are self-charging through, even with move through cover, you still got to take the lowest. You ignore
Absolutely. Yeah.
you still take you don't get the movement penalty, and you don't get the difficult, like the dangerous terrain penalty going through it.
Yeah. You're correct.
As well, I've seen for some reason online people are already talking about saying that you could bring woods for it, which I don't think is right because this
I
is
don't think
difficult.
is accurate. No. It's
No,
like
'cause-
it's a pond or like a cornfield or something. It's not a forest. Yeah.
that's pretty much what it's supposed to be. Instead of a so I understand woods are a type of difficult terrain, but they also have the rule of blocking line of sight.
Which is not the case here.
Yeah, which is like woods are a top part, and then it can be one of its rules is difficult. But I think just the fact that you can place it in the center as well is also just a fantastic rule, as you said. Definitely, if you are playing just right out of the rule book, like I think we've gotten rid of the idea of keeping terrain clear in the center, just because it does funnel everyone to the center, and then it's just a bunch of terrain on the outside because you still have that 12-inch spacing, which is kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
What about you, Andrew?
I think you guys kind of really covered it. The only point I was gonna make was it's not a forest. You guys already touched on that, so I really got nothing else to add.
Okay. So let's just quickly there from everybody. How do you think those 4 different rules come together with the army construction or the army composition there together to sort of impact the army? And do you think it makes, like, when you take it all together, like it creates something that is impactful from a competitive perspective, or do you think it's just a bunch of flavor that's added on to the army? Danny?
For myself, if you are going for competitive aspect, the only rule you really care about here is probably the Warriors of Wilderness, getting that move with the cover, and I guess also the ambushing, if you are taking any units in ambush.
Mm-hmm.
From a flavor perspective, the idea of having, again, a big block of spearmen as in your core, you give them the white line cloaks, you model those on, you get through move through cover. The GW used to sell Chracian shields, so it'd be cool if they re-release those. Like, those would be really cool upgrades through. You get those lions on their shields. I think it can look really cool, but I think these special rules are very much for flavor and not going to impact your games too much competitively.
Yeah. With the exception of the Warriors of the Wilderness. Which
that's the main one. That's the best rule there.
Yeah. Thoughts on this, Andrew?
Yeah, like these are mostly thematic other than Wars of the Wilderness. I think you will be able to use that very much to your advantage competitively, but the other 2 are kind of just nice to have, but probably won't necessarily straight up win you games. But it is cool for thematic reasons for sure.
Yeah, so I agree with you guys entirely on this one. Like, Warriors of Wilderness matters competitively. The rest of the stuff, I mean, sometimes the ambush might matter depending on how you build the list, but otherwise you're really going for that big piece of difficult terrain. And here's an interesting thought I just had: is a lot of tournament packs actually go down the road of difficult terrain counts as dangerous for cavalry units. So if you're playing in one of those scenarios and then you blanket the big open part of the board with a bunch of difficult terrain, like, it makes life really miserable for your Bretonian or whatever all cav army opponent you have. So that may like secretly pop up to be another pretty strong aspect to this rule. Okay, so we've covered the rules. Let's talk about the units. So we've mentioned them a few times already. The first unit we're going to be covering is going to be the Chracian Woodsman, because I'm a big fan. I gave them to myself, obviously, so I'm going to walk you guys through what that unit does. Okay, so for 12 points, you have a unit that is movement 5, weapon skill and ballistics skill 4, strength 4, toughness 3, 1 wound, 4 initiative, 1 attack, obviously, and then leadership 8 at 12 points. The unit comes with hand weapons, which you're going to ignore because you get Chracian Great Blades, which are strength +2, AP -3. They come stock with light armor. You can take war bows, which are obviously fire at strength user, so there's strength 4 shots in this case for 1 point per model, and then you can replace their light armor with heavy armor for 1 point per model. Interestingly, you could get the whole command slew there. You could get the unit champion, the standard bearer, and the musician. Interestingly, I'm saying because these are skirmish only units, and usually you don't get that choice in skirmishing units. You can also give the unit +1 for 1 point per model. You can give them the Lion Cloak, which brings them to a 4 up, assuming you got the heavy armor upgrade earlier. So you're looking at 4 up armor save there. They come with Vanguard, which is just a good rule in general, especially for this kind of unit. You can replace it for free with Scouts, which is just, again, a solid. It's been nerfed a little bit recently, but a solid rule. And then for another point per model, you could give them Ambushers. So overall, and they come with obviously Elven Reflexes, move through cover, which is important in this army, Skirmishers, Valor of Ages, and then Vanguard. So the only things that really matter here is move through cover, Skirmishers, and Vanguard, obviously. So I really like this unit as just a very, very flexible platform that you could build your core slot around. 12 points, they're probably always going to be like 14 or 15 points once you've put on the upgrades, but having a unit that has strength 4 shots at ballistic skill 4 and then has a really solid strength +2 AP3 weapon in close combat and his skirmishers is just fantastic. So I would be really happy to have this unit in my army, for instance. What I will say though, which is super important, is because these guys cannot be open order and they're only skirmishers, it's going to limit the size of the unit you could take. So I would not advise going above like a maximum of 10 on these guys, because if you do get charged with the FAQ that came out like about 7 or 8 months ago there, the units that cannot use their 5 inches of movement to form up in combat are just going to disappear. Like they're going to be removed from play. So if you take like 20 or 30 Chracian Woodsmen, you're just going to lose them to the first thing that charges you. So like I would strongly like not advise doing that. But I mean, if you can work around that skirmisher restriction, I think this is just a really, really solid unit that can fire long range and just suck your enemy into difficult terrain and just be a nuisance for not that big of a point spend. And yeah, just having the ability to ambush or scout. Ambush, I'm a little bit less sold on, but definitely scout. If your opponent doesn't deploy properly, you could really punish them with. So yeah, overall, I really, really like these guys, and I think they're the strongest option in core. What are your thoughts going to Andrew?
Yeah, like these guys definitely are going to be taking up almost, if not all of your core point allotment. And you can sort of customize them the way you want them to be on the field. So, I think most people are going to just do like the war bows, maybe the heavy armor, and then have them as like your sort of quote unquote rank and file units on your main battle line. But I can see also people foregoing the warbow, putting ambusher on them, and just hoping to sort of sneak in on your opponent's backside and get like cheeky charges off on casters hiding in the back or war machines and stuff like that. So you got a lot of utility with what you can do with this unit and kind of customize it to what you want to do. So yeah, like this is a really cool unit for this list.
Yeah, and the only thing, Andrew, like I agree with everything you said. I think they can actually systematically wreck war machines in the back line with like strength 6 attacks when they charge. So definitely, but the only thing I'll say is like taking up all of the core allotment just depends on if you're doing rule of 3/6 for core in your local meta, because if it's a hard
fair
rule
enough.
of 3, you're going to have a hard time just making 500 points out of 3 units. But aside from that, I agree with everything you said. Going over to you, Danny.
For myself, one thing I was thinking about was just the fact that you could put scout on them, get rid of their vanguard, just in case your opponent does have scouts. Because then you can just use that as a way to kind of push their scouts back, deploy them. But I mean, yeah, with the new FAQ, you really don't want to place the scouts unless your opponent's also doing it. Then you can kind of play, because otherwise you're not getting the +1 to go first anymore.
Yeah.
Also, just as a different aspect, I think these guys will also be a lot of fun to convert. I kind of had a couple ideas with just like using the White Lion plastic kit. You take the plastic archer arms as well. There you go. I think there's some extra metal, or not metal, in the White Lion chariot kit. There's a couple axes that you can put on their backs, just like loose axes, so you can easily put those on their back for their great weapons, or their Chracian great blades.
Yeah.
As well, even using the old metal White Lions, just so they look different than the new plastic ones. And then you can throw a quiver on their back for their war bows, or even if you didn't want them to have the war bow, they're pretty good because they're pretty agile looking. I am also just very surprised that you can take the full command.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you ever want a standard bearer just because it makes their unit that much more valuable to your opponent.
Agreed.
But maybe you do, like you want to throw in a unit to flank, not to flank with them to get an extra banner. I think you guys pretty much talked them up. They're amazing. So as you said too, was you don't want a big unit, because then as soon as someone touches you with a character or something, some of them might just end up dying if they can't make it into combat.
Yeah, for sure. And so just hitting on your conversion point there, Danny. So what I was thinking about this too. I thought of using like Glade Guard from the Wood Elves, and then putting bits of White Lions on them to give sort of like the skirmishy woodsman feel to them. But like I also like the option of that you mentioned there. So I think it's. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would just say, what's the Wood Elf unit with the great axes?
Yeah, I was just about to say
the Rangers, I think they're called.
The Rangers. They would be perfect with like just swap the weapon for like the White Lion axe.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think that's also another good option. So combining those two lines, I think you'll get some really characterful units there, and that'll be really, really solid. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So we started off strong. We're reducing the coolness level. Well, the coolness level is still super high, but let's say the competitive level a little bit with War Lions. What are your thoughts? And can you go through the unit, please, Andrew?
Coolness level is still through the roof.
Is stellar, yeah.
Stellar. So War Lions, they're 18 points. For that, you get a movement 8, weapon skill 5, strength and toughness 4, 1 wound model, with initiative 4, 2 attacks, and leadership 7. They are war beasts. You can take them in units of 2 to 6. They have hand weapons, unfortunately. For special rules, they have Fear, Move Through Cover, Open Order, Swift Stride, Vanguard, and their own custom rule, Cleaving Blow. This one, although is custom, it comes up in a bunch of other armies too. So basically, it's Killing Blow Light. If a model with this special rule rolls a natural 6 when making a 2-wound roll for an attack, it has struck a Cleaving Blow. Enemies whose troop type are regular infantry, heavy infantry, light cav, heavy cav, or war beast are not permitted an armor or regen save against a Cleaving Blow. Ward saves can still be taken. Yeah, I like them. It would have been nice if they had a little bit more defensive capabilities.
Yeah.
And just having hand weapons, you're kind of relying on getting those cleaving blows to have any sort of like armor penetration. And I always say that if you're fishing for sixes to get anything done, then it's probably not the best strategy tactically. So that's unfortunate because this was something I was, hoping they would make. It's a very easy win for them to do. It's such a cool like model and conversion potential for the army, and just gives it its own unique flair. It's just for 18 points, you're kind of not getting something that great, which is unfortunate. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
For
Danny, go ahead now.
Yeah, for myself, like 2 lines for 36 points isn't great. Pretty much as a minimum unit size, but I guess it would be good if you are just taking a unit or two and just kind of placing them down at the beginning, just to kind of force your opponent to deploy something, just to kind of help figure out where everyone else is deploying, because you're gonna have a bunch of skirmishers that will be
Exactly.
a little bit brittle to being shot at. So it would be nice to be able to kind of prevent them from, or just to help yourself deploy. The strange thing I find is white line cloaks give you armor save versus range shooting, but the white lions that actually where their pelts are from don't provide them any defensive abilities, which is a little silly. Even if they just had light armor,
Well,
would be
like,
great.
the skin hasn't been like cured and worked on and shit.
Exactly.
Like,
I guess so. It's a
not-
little tougher.
it hasn't been turned into leather yet.
I
Exactly.
guess that makes a huge difference. As well, like I think on the chariots themselves, the white lions only have armor being 1, which gets turned into cleaving blow, which I guess represents them being able to actually, do some work and actually like be lions instead of horses.
Mhm.
So they're slightly more effective, but it is very disappointing that they're 1 wound with 2 attacks. I would have been happy if maybe they also got Furious Charge in there to kind of help get the 3 attacks.
Or even cause, I don't know, like AP1 would have been way better.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
it's a
have
fucking
AP1
lion,
base.
like, it'd rip
Yeah.
through anything, so. I don't know, it just
It-
seems kind of like a flop.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think they're a full-on flop. So I agree with you guys. I think they're pricey for 18 points. 18 points, especially when you only have 1 wound. I think like they're a quite direct comparison from a stats perspective to the saber tusks and ogres, and I think they'll fulfill much of the same role in this army. But unfortunately, saber tusks have 2 wounds and not 1, which really, in my eyes, puts them a step above. So I think that's what hurts the most. And as you guys mentioned, having no armor and then just 1 wound, like. Straight up wounds for 18 points is a bit of a rough one for sure. I mean, all that being said, though, I think they still have a role as like I'd take them in units of maybe like 2 or 3, because you like three lines, you'd get 6 attacks with cleaving blows somewhere on a flank, which is not terrible with the profile that they have. So using them to be annoying, run around the enemy line, chase down weak units, be redirectors, just get in the way, like this kind of role. If you could do that for 36 points, or I think 52 points, 54 points, I think that's not a bad investment, but I wouldn't go above that for sure. So I think 2 very small units, 1 or 2, you could probably use in an army that doesn't have cavalry otherwise. Between those guys and a dragon or some chariots, I think you're getting enough mobility in the army to sustain all the other shooters that you'll have out back. So not bad, but I agree with you guys that
Yeah.
I would have liked to see a bit more. Yeah.
I will
Danny?
say
At that
though.
point, like, yeah,
Go ahead, Andrew.
why not just take like a Great Eagle? It's a
think-
little better, it's quicker, it's got AP, it can take a bit of a hit. Like, I don't know. It just seems like that would be like if you're planning to take, like, sure, it'd be double the points, or
Yeah.
like,
Just
a
shy
third
of
more
double.
points.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna take like War Lions in a block of like 5, like, why not just take the Great Eagle? It has a little bit more utility, and it can actually, do a decent hit as opposed to, just relying on strength 4 hits.
Yeah, so I guess like I don't disagree. I also don't hate the Great Eagle for that kind of role, but what I will say is like you can get 2 units of 2 White Lions for 12 more points than a single Great Eagle, so like if you want to cover
Sure.
both your flanks with Great Eagles, that's 120 points, whereas you could do it for 72 with the Lions. So you can shave off some points there, but I agree with you that in this specific army, I don't think the Great Eagles are too bad of a pick, actually. um yeah, and then Danny, I think you were trying to say something also.
I was just gonna say they're also pretty good for just as a cheap redirector as well if you
Yep.
need
Yep.
that. Which is, and I feel like they're still pretty good for war machine hunting. Your opponent's probably not going to be worrying about them when they have a bunch of woodsmen dealing with a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah,
The ones that are
agreed.
probably doing the damage. So I feel like if you had just 2 or 3, your opponent wouldn't even look at them while you're going up the flanks.
Yeah, and then sometimes just having that little utility piece that you could run behind the enemy army can just work wonders. Like I do the same thing in my army with like a hobgoblin con, like a lone guy on a wolf, who admittedly is better than these guys, but like all that being said, like the number of times that you see your opponent do something quote unquote that's a little bit like silly, like have a hierophant on foot behind their line or something that you could just run your lines at, like just having that utility for 36 points or 54 points is not bad either, right? So
Sure.
yeah, okay, let's move on to the next one. Danny, why don't you bring us through Lion Guard?
All right, Lion Guard. So these are the more elite version of the White Lions. They're almost the same stat line. Movement 5, weapon skill 6, bliss skill 4, strength 4, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 5, 1 attack, and leadership 9 for 18 points. And for that, get hand weapons, tracing, great blades, and heavy armor. They have the usual command at 7 points per piece. As well, they can purchase a magic banner up to 50 points. The Lion Guard captain can take magic items up to 50 points. Their special rules are Champions of Trace, Close Order, Elven Reflexes, Furious Charge, Lion Cloak, Stubborn, and Veteran. So their new rule is Champions of Trace, which is any model and a unit of Lion Guard can accept challenges in the same manner as a character. In addition, once per turn, a character that has joined the unit of Lion Guard may re-roll their Lookout Sir roll. So the big thing with these guys is they lose move through cover, which your entire army has except for these guys. They are closed order versus open order, like your regular Lion Guard are. But they do have the Furious Charge, so at least when they're charging, they got 2 attacks at your strength 6 and likely initiative 4 on the charge, or 5 on the charge, because you're initiative 1 with the Great Blades, 3 for your movement, and then +1 for your Elven Reflexes. They already come with Veteran Standard versus the regular White Lions who have to purchase it. Command is 1 point more, which doesn't really change too much. You're paying 3 extra points for your command versus, so yeah, spending 21 points instead of 18 versus the other
Sure.
unit. Not much of a difference. Yeah, regular White Lions, their champion can only take 25 points, so you get a few extra magic point allotment as well. The Champions of Trace rule is, I know people have been excited that these Lion Guard can accept challenges and issue challenges, but regular White Lions could do that as well as long as a general was in the unit. So if you were taking a big block as kind of an anvil or something, you could already do this. I guess the big difference is the regular White Lions, in order to join that unit, you need the Lion honor, versus these guys, you don't need to have the special honor to join them. So the big difference, I was also looking at the point difference. Regular White Lions are 14 points before Veteran. Lion Guards are 18. And White Lions, I feel like, are a little expensive to begin with for T3 and just a 5-up save. I guess 4+ for range and 5-up for combat. I kind of wish they came with full plate, since they already lost their open order or their move through cover, just to kind of push them a little bit higher for that 4 points you're spending on this upgrade. So out of the 4 points, you're getting 1 or 2 points is for your weapon skill upgrade. Another one's for Furious Charge, and then another point for Veteran. So it makes sense that they're 4 points more, but also I wish there was still something else to kind of push them above for these guys. Like I still see them, but I don't think anyone's gonna be taking them unless you really want to convert up some really cool looking white lions or lion guard. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you'll be seeing a ton of these guys, unfortunately, because like as you mentioned, there's a really cool conversion thematic possibility with them. I mean, weapon skill 6 is cool, I guess. I think the really important breakpoint is more like weapon skill 7, because that's what the fighty lords you're going to be dealing with, which will be charging this really juicy points wise unit of Lion Guard are going to be fighting at weapon skill 7. So I mean, it won't matter in that matchup. You'll still be hitting on 4s. They'll still be hitting on 3s. So I think it's not that big of a deal, frankly. And I think probably the biggest nail in the coffin for these guys is they're going to be outcompeted for the rare slot by Sisters of Averlorn, which are just a super effective unit in the lineup, and especially I think synergize really well with what you want to do with this specific army of infamy. So I think for that reason, you're not going to see a ton of Lion Guard. I mean, Furious Charge is great, but as you mentioned, Danny not having moves through cover that the rest of the army has, with a lot of difficult terrain, obviously, as we've discussed, being in play here is going to hurt their ability to get that Furious Charge off. And it's not like foot infantry was really getting a lot of charges off as it were. So I think that one you're probably not going to see come up too often as a ruling game. I mean, like I, for instance, have Black Orcs in my army with Furious Charge. They get charged way more often than they do any charging. So I think the same situation is going to come up with these guys. Other than that, like the Champions of Chrace rule, I mean, it's like this one is a double-edged sword. It just depends on the situation. You know, if there's a character on monster that you want to tie down for the whole game or part of the game anyways, with these, then great. But it can also be abused against you by just constantly locking you in challenges when you perhaps don't want to be, when your unit gets smaller and that kind of stuff. So so there's that. And then for I think the final nail in the coffin for the Lion Guard, as far as I'm concerned, is the problem here is you've got white lions in core, and I think white lions are like the 80 bring to the table 80 to 90% of what the Lion Guard are bringing, but they're in core. So yeah, I think if you want to bring white lions in your army, you're going to take them in that core unit, and then Lion Guard are just not going to end up seeing the board, unfortunately, because I think they're a really cool unit. But yeah. All right, so I think we're all. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Andrew, what are your thoughts on the Lion Guard?
Yeah, I think you guys mostly covered it. Like, they're cool, and Furious Charge is nice, but as you said, they're probably not going to get the charge, and they're taking up, those really lucrative rare points. Maybe you'd see more if they were in the special slot.
Yeah.
But like regular white lions just kind of are almost the same, but they're in core, so it's just better value out of them, which is unfortunate because it is like a cool unit in theory. But yeah, that's about it.
I did have another thought for this unit. Is if the one thing that may make them worth it is if they didn't get strike last with their Great Blades. Then there'd at least be initiative 9 on the charge. I think that would be a little more exciting, or if someone charges them initiative 6. But they're still stuck with great weapons striking last.
Yeah, no, exactly. So they have all the downsides of white lions, and then none of the sort of other upsides that we mentioned earlier. So, okay, so let's move on to our next unit. I'll take this one, the Chracian Chieftains, which is like the bespoke new leader model that you get in this Army of Infamy. So the Chieftains have movement 5, weapon skill 6, ballistic skill 4, strength 4, toughness 3. So the white lion stat line. They're 3 wounds each. They are initiative 5, 3 attacks, leadership 9 for 105 points. They come stock with heavy armor, and then you can give them a Chracian Great Blade for 3 points, which is good, or An additional hand weapon for some reason for 4 points. They could be mounted on the Chieftain's Chariot, which we'll cover in a few minutes, and then can purchase up to 75 points of magic items. They come stock with Furious Charge, Ephemeral weapons for those rerolls. The Lion Cloak is built in. They have move through cover. They have strikes first, which is good, especially with the Great Blade. They have stubborn, and then they have Valor of the Ages. So I think this is actually not a bad little fighty character unit. It's going to be strength 6, AP 3, which is really decent for basically everything in the game, frankly, especially with high initiative and really decent weapon skill. So yeah, being able to take 75 points of magic items is also really nice. I think on a Chieftain's Chariot, again, which we'll cover in a few minutes, they could be a good little beat stick that you can run around and just kick some butt with. They synergize well with the army of infamy. So I think one of the really obvious use cases for these guys is putting them as BSBs in a unit of White Lions or Lion Guard, if you want to go that direction, with the banner that gives +1 toughness to the unit, which we'll obviously cover later there. But yeah, so all that to say, I think they're a pretty good little package, and 105 points for that is not terrible at all. What are your thoughts on this one? Starting with Danny.
For myself, I was looking at it. The big thing I've noticed is they don't have elven reflexes, which is, I'm sure, just a typo. Because it's not the only unit in this book that's also missing elven reflexes. There's a couple.
He has strikes first.
Oh, maybe that's why. Okay, so
Like
they probably don't need.
I'm coming from like the Dark Elves. All their characters that have strikes first don't have the elven reflexes.
Okay. So that's fine then. But for, I guess he's 35 more points than a regular prince. He does have the benefit of the Great Blade striking at initiative, with strike last and strike first kind of canceling each other out. So you are initiative 5, and as Kevin said, you probably are going to run him on as a BSB. With 75 points of allotment too, there's a new magic item that gives yourself the extra wound as well. And as well, you still got 20 points left over. You can give him a regen save and throw him on a chariot for a pretty tanky BSB, or even just have him in the White Lions unit just for that extra little bit of punch to the unit. So I think either way, you can either run him pretty aggressively or defensively, and just having 3 wounds being that kind of in between a prince and a noble actually is a lot of fun. Though I wish there was more weapon options, like even if he had a warbow as an option, make him able to join the woodsman. But each their own.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this one, Andrew?
Yeah, I think like this guy is the perfect sort of BSB chassis to like set up the way you want. I think he comes into his own once he does get that chariot. Otherwise, he's kind of just bumming around on foot, and I don't know if that's the best place for him. Unless you're taking like a big sort of Death Star White Lions block, but I don't think that's the way to go. So yeah, I think you're gonna want him on the chariot, and he does have a lot going for him. 3 attacks with the Chracian Great Blade's great. Maybe you'd swap that weapon out though for a magic weapon, and then you're not worried about the strikes last. But yeah, I think it really comes into his own once we cover that chariot.
Yeah, one more thought is like we were talking about the chariot, but I wish it was kind of a light chariot, so you could put him in with the unit on the chariot with a unit of White Lions. You obviously can't, but I think there's like 2 builds to this guy. You either go as Andrew you're talking about, like as a beat stick character or a small beat stick on a chariot running around just killing stuff, because he does have a really good profile. Or I think the second use case is, as I mentioned earlier, and as we've all talked about, a BSB to buff that brick of White Lions that you might have in your core slot. I think toughness 4 is a really good break point on the White Lions and on the elves in general. because of how flimsy they are. So if you do put him in there with that banner, you're looking at a strength 4 T4 unit. So basically like a dwarf, great weapon unit. So not bad at all. Not bad at all there. So we've talked about it quite a bit. Andrew, you want to just run through the Chieftain's Chariot?
Sure. So it's 105 points. The chariot itself has strength 5, T4, and 3 wounds. Then you have one charioteer on it that has weapon skill 5, BS4, strength 4, 1 attack, and initiative 4. And it's pulled by 2 Chracian lions with movement 8, weapon skill 5, strength 4, initiative 4, and 2 attacks apiece. It is a heavy chariot. You can only take an unit size of 1. It has built-in armor save of 4+. Excuse me. The equipment, so the charioteer has hand weapon and the Chracian great blade. The lions themselves have claws and fangs, so hand weapons. The lions, weirdly, on the chariot have armor band 1 instead of that cleaving blow when they're not hitched up to the chariot. It's a close order unit. It has elven reflexes, causes fear, has first charge, impact hits D6. If it's the chieftain's chariot only, what does that mean?
So yeah, because there was a lot of FAQ questions about if all the models were doing impact hits. It's only the chariot that does the impact hits. Like
For real,
the
people
lions,
thought everyone got impact hits.
people asked.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah,
Okay,
anyways.
whatever.
Yeah.
It has stubborn and then valor of ages. So yeah, like I said, like I think the chieftain really needs to be riding this thing. It gives him a lot more defensibility just with, the 3 extra wounds. I guess not a buff in toughness, but he does have armor 4+. Because of he's on the chariot, and he just has like a buttload of extra supporting attacks, impact hits, and then you layer on top of that like any sort of magic armor upgrades, or make him the BSB anyway, for that extra bit of like combat res. So I think like this is the way to go with him, and just kind of have him as this sort of scary, fast moving unit that can sort of bail out when you're more squishy units if they get in a bad position. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, so I actually really like this chariot. It's a small downgrade from the regular White Lion chariot because you lose 1 wound and you have 1 less rider attack, charioteer attack. But I think regardless, it really pumps up the viability of the chieftain when you put him on this platform. So when this guy's charging, and he probably will, because has much more of a chance of charging than like on foot with movement 8. You're getting 5 attacks at strength with fierce charge, 5 attack at strength 6 AP3, which is the exact same output as a Black Orc war boss, which is like amazing, right? With great weapon, of course, which is really strong offensive output. You're getting impact hits on top of that at strength 5, which is nothing to sniff at, really. And then on top of that, you're looking at a 6 wound character that's starting at T4 that could be upgraded potentially also, but is probably going to be T4. Starting with a 4 up save. I mean, for 20 points, you give them a 5 up after, because you're high elves and you could do that. So yeah, I think it's a very, very playable and effective piece. And if you are intending for your chieftain to do any kind of fighting, he should be on the chariot. What about you, Danny?
Yeah, I think you guys covered everything. One question I always had was if the Lion Cloak applies to the chariot, is it getting a 3 up save versus shooting?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So yeah, so it's pretty good defensively just in general. Yeah, it's great. Being like at least a decent amount cheaper. With the regular chariot being 140 or 130 for the regular White Lion.
125. I think it's a 20 point.
Okay, 20 points. So it's still a decent discount. It would be interesting to see the difference between a prince on one to a chieftain on one. I mean, the chieftain's still going to hit harder with 4 attacks instead of the usual 3. They'll both be at 6 wounds. I guess not a prince, a noble on one.
Yeah.
So they both get 6 wounds, but I think the chieftain one's still going to hit harder with just with the actual chieftain on top.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah, agreed with you on that one. Let's move on. I think I'll pass it to you, Danny, to talk about Corhill.
All right, so good old Corhill. He is coming in at 175 points. What you get is Moon 5, Weapon Skill 7, plus Skill 5, Strength 4, Toughness 3, 3 wounds, Initiative 6, 4 attacks, Leadership 9. He comes with a hand weapon, Chai-Hull, which is, I believe, his axe, the pelt, Sharndia, or Shandis, and heavy armor. He does have an option for Chieftain Chariot, which I think is one of the first special characters to actually come with an option for something.
Yeah.
Special rules. It's got Elven Reflexes, Furious Charge, Mighty Constitution, Move Through Cover, Stubborn, and Valor of Ages. Mighty Constitution is a new rule for him. During a turn which he has made a charge move of 3 inches or more, Corhill gains +1 to his strength characteristic. In addition, Corhill is immune to poison attacks, special rule. And if he's been hit with an attack with a special rule, the attacker must roll the wound as normal. And the next part, I just got to get that up, is the pelt of Sharendis. The wearer of the pelt improves their armor save. Improves their armor by 1 while engaged in combat, and by 2 against ranged attacks, or against non-magical shooting attacks. In addition, he also has 5+ regen save. And then for his axe, it is strength +2, so it'll be strength 6, AP 3, killing blow, and requires 2 hands. And as well, he may reroll any rolls of a natural 1 when making natural 1 to hit. So just generally, he is a beat stick. So when he charges, he'll be 5 attacks, weapon skill 7, strength 7, killing blow. Like he'll be hitting real hard. Give him that chariot just to get him a little faster. Again, this one actually doesn't. No, he does have elven reflexes, so he's not getting the strike first. But I guess that's to kind of represent him being really skilled with that great weapon, his own axe. So he'll still be at initiative 7 first round of combat.
Well, his axe doesn't have always
The strike left. Yeah, so I think that's what it's trying to represent, though, is he doesn't get the strike first.
See what you mean,
Yeah, so he's just getting elven reflexes instead of the strike first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his stats wise, like he's pretty much a prince, but I think cheaper. Like he's just an upgraded chieftain for the most part. For 70 extra points, you're getting quite a bit. He's a special character that is getting a regen save, which is rare. On a chariot, if he's on the chieftain chariot, he's going to be at a 2+ save against range shooting, and then 3+ save in combat. Because I believe the pelt also does increase your armor save combat, but it's against all attacks and not like the ranged version, because that specifies non-magical attacks for shooting attacks. So I think he's pretty tanky himself. I think you're pretty much always going to be taking him on a chariot, because you wouldn't take him in a unit. He's not buffing your White Lion unit or one of your other units. He's leadership 9, so if you still have points to take a prince on a dragon, and probably can still fit an archmage on foot. And your prince on the dragon can be your general, so you can just kind of throw this guy into somebody and just hammer away. What else do I have here? Yeah, I think overall he's great. I just wish he did buff White Lions, like just a reason to put him in a unit versus just always take him on the chariot. What about you guys?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I actually like Corhill quite a bit. There's not a lot of unique characters that I think are super viable, but I think this guy is probably going to see some play, especially in the Army of Infamy. Maybe not so much in the Grand Army. I mean, first of all, like, so he's just a really solid beat stick in general. And I agree with you, Danny, that you're going to be putting him on a chariot for sure. Otherwise, like, wouldn't really bother because he doesn't buff your White Lions, as you mentioned. His stats are really strong. Like weapon skill 7 is that super important breakpoint when you're fighting other characters. He's strength 7 on the charge, which is fantastic because there's not a lot of stuff in the game that goes above toughness 6. So that's really good. Then he just has a slew of cool little rules, which I think add up to a pretty nifty package when you ignore poison. Killing blow is always good to have. Rerolling ones, especially when you're at weapon skill 7 and hitting, I think, essentially everything on threes in the game. Being able to reroll ones does have some mileage to it, and then just coming stock with a regen save, I think is kind of required in this army to just be part of the conversation, because everything in the army gets or all the characters in the army get a 20-point 5-up regen save. So you kind of need to have it to be on their level. So the fact that he comes with it is really good. I think Corhill is totally playable in a competitive context. I think he's going to get outcompeted for points by, well, not directly there, but he's going to get outcompeted by the Prince on Dragon, just because that's such a powerful piece in that army. But let's say you don't want to take a dragon, for instance. He's a really, really both flavorful and effective option that you could not exactly replace it with, but you can sort of do some of the work with. And I also like your idea, Danny, of having the dragon. Having the Dragon Prince, having Corhill on the Chariot, and then just having a cheap level forecaster, mainly for defensive magic stuff, all in the same army. I think that's a pretty effective stable of characters there. So I'm pro Corhill. I think he's got play. Definitely not an auto take, but I think you can use him as a secondary or primary beat stick in the army. So good stuff there. Okay, so moving on, just going to close out the unit section now. So guys, I want to hear you on, do you think there are any, what are your standouts in this unit list? Are there any stinkers or things that you think you just won't really see? And then, what do you think are, from a competitive perspective, what's this army going to rely on in these new units? Starting with Andrew.
I think sort of the winners of this list are the woodsman for sure. That's gonna be your staple. You're gonna see that in every army. Probably also the chieftain and or Corhill, depending on sort of which one you want to take and how much points you have. Definitely on the chariot as well. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see a lot of the Lion Guard, just because, again, the actual regular White Lions kind of are better points value and aren't taking up those slots that you need them to. And I don't know, I'm still not convinced that you'll see too many War Lions, which is unfortunate because that was one of the units I was hoping they would do. But yeah, for the most part, I think those are the winners of the list, and those will be sort of your backbone for any sort of Chracian Warhost lists, and then whatever smattering of sisters you add in on top of that, and characters and whatnot. So I think it's a solid stable of new stuff for this list, which is nice. Some of which one? There was one of the books where it was only 1 or 2 new units. This has a full 5 or 6 unique things just for this list.
Yeah.
So it's really cool, and it really shapes. It really makes this stand out as something different than that core list, the regular Warhost list. So this is really cool. I dig it.
Yep. Yep. I completely agree with you, Andrew, there in terms of your ranking. I think that from a competitive perspective, I think the Woodsmen are super competitive in terms of you're going to see them anytime you see this Army of Infamy. I think the Woodsmen will show up. I think then if you move down a tier to just effective and very playable units, you'll find as you mentioned, the chieftains and Corhill, especially on chariots or as a BSB buffing a brick of White Lions. I think those 2 units do have play, and you will see them in this Army of Infamy for sure. Then if you keep going down another level, I think the War Lions are suboptimal because of how they're priced and the fact that they have no defense whatsoever. But I think they still have a role in this army, and you could see one or two small units of them running around just to fill a slot that's not really super well filled with the absence of like Illyrian Reavers and light cav or the other cav that's in the high elf list. And then finally, I think if you go down to the things you'll probably not see, as you guys have both mentioned earlier, their Lion Guard I think are not really going to show up a lot on the tables. So yeah, overall, I think just a really good set of units that you can bring in this army of infamy, and I'm pretty happy. It's thematic and it's playable for the most part. What are your thoughts on this one, Danny?
For me, I can see people playing it competitively. It might be a sleeper hit for a little while. Like maybe people aren't going to run it right away because they're just going to take the new stuff in Grand Army more than likely.
Yeah.
But I can see as soon as you start building the list competitively, you start with 3 units. If we're running the regular rule of 3 units of the Woodsmen, and then a block of White Lions as your core. You can throw your BSP in there if you want, if you're going to do that. Your Dragon still and an Archmage, or if you're going to run Core Hill, another Dragon and your Archmage. I guess your special, I don't see much in special other than maybe the Chariots. And then, as you said, the White Lions, or the War Lions, they could be taken, but they're pretty cheap. And then your rare is probably just going to be Sisters of Avalorn. I don't see many of the other options. You'll never see Eagle Bolt Throwers for the most part. Still think Great Eagles are still too brittle for what they want to accomplish. If they were 360, I think they would be great. It's just that they're so regimented in their movement, being closed order, without any of the real benefits of it. But I think, just units of Woodsmen, units of 8, got a lot of shooting. You can do a lot with them. You can have them ambush, scout, vanguard. You can make them more combat oriented, more shooting oriented. I think they're probably the big piece is how to build them so they're not too expensive as well. Because being 15 points for a T3 model can be pretty tough sometimes.
Yeah, but welcome to elves, I guess.
yeah, they're just generally, and
Yeah.
you get that new item that we'll eventually get to that can change that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
For sure. Okay, so all good. So we're going to move on to items now. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to skip the Seaguard Garrison only items and cover those next time. But we are going to do the general ones that apply to everybody. So we're going to start magic weapons, of course. And Andrew, I'm going to give you the beadiest of all sticks to start with, the Woodsman's Axe.
Yeah, so this is the super expensive magic weapon that every army always gets. It comes in at a whopping 90 points. For that, you get a strength +3 weapon with a crazy AP4. It has magical attacks, monster slayer. It requires 2 hands, and it has strikes last. This weapon can only be taken by models in the Chracian Warhost army. Little bit controversial take. I like it. I think it's actually pretty fucking good. Strength, like, yes, you're eating up all of your magic points allotment essentially, but you have a strength +3, so on most elven characters that'll be a strength 6. AP4 means you're ignoring all armor except for a 2+ save, which then gets reduced to a 6 up. And it has Monster Slayer built in. The only thing that kind of lets it down is the strikes last, but I guess that kind of makes sense if it's a big 2-handed axe. Yeah, I like it. Maybe it's a little bit too much. Like maybe if it was like 80 or 75 points, it'd be more viable to take, but I still think there's ways to make this weapon work for you. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Danny?
yeah. For me, I think it is like an all or nothing kind of weapon. Like being 90 points, you could still kind of take one item. You could take a Dragon Helm. which gives you that 2+ save. So at least you have that. If it was down to the 80 points, then you could take the 5+ regen. It having strike last, I don't think really matters, because as long as you're taking it on your prince, you're counteracting that, so you're still striking at initiative. So it'd be strength 7. Still fishing for 6s. Not always the best time, but at least you're able to tank something. And if you fail, at least you're probably still doing wounds because you're still AP4. You're not relying on the Monster Slayer like the Monster Slayer sword that in the rulebook where you need the 6 to even get any AP or anything. It would also been nice, and maybe it was damage 2.
Sure.
But maybe that would have been too much, being AP2 or damage 2 and Monster Slayer.
Yeah, I think most things that are not affected by Monster Slayer are just going to die to the 1 wounds because of the volume of high quality attacks, Except maybe like heavy chariots and stuff. But aside from that,
that's the thing for me. Like, it's almost like the Monster Slayer is just extra on top of being strength +3 AP4.
Yeah. Because strength 7 AP4, watch out.
Yeah, that's look the fuck out.
Yeah.
So, if you get that Monster Slayer to proc, that's amazing too. But you're just gonna hit like a truck regardless. I don't know. Again, I think a little bit overcosted at 90, but I think it's still a pretty decent weapon.
Yeah, agreed. So from my perspective, I think the weapon, just the profile and the rules, it absolutely slaps. This is a really, really good weapon. I think where it's going to fall through though is the fact that it's 90 points. I think if it was 80 points, for instance, it would really have a strong, it would really strongly be in contention for use in the army, because then you could put at least the Seed of Rebirth on your dragon and then have a guy running around with strength 7 AP4 attacks, Monster Slayer, and then he'd be on a 3-up 5-up, which wouldn't be that bad. But the thing is, even if you do give him the dragon helm, for instance, and he's running around on a 2-up, but then he gets targeted by a pair of cannons, and he only has a save that's now reduced to a 5, I think, at least a 5, then you're taking big chunks out of him with no other saves behind. So for 90 points, I think, it's not that it's worth 90 points. The problem is that it prevents you from taking defensive items, and I think for that reason you're not really going to see it much, although I do agree with you guys that it is good. All right, Danny, you want to go through the Bow of the Seafarer? Is that one a Seaguard only?
No, it's surprisingly not.
Okay, yeah, the name threw me off for a second. I thought I made a mistake. Yeah.
So it's got range 30, strength 5, AP3. It's cumbersome, magical attacks, multi wounds D3, and it's got through and through. So it is pretty much a bolt thrower for a total of 50 points. The Bow of Seafarer counts as a Bow of Avalorn. The Bow of the Seafarer shoots like a bolt thrower using the through and through special roll. Being 50 points means your heroes can take it, which is great because most of them are BS6, so they're hitting on ones before modifiers, and then they still get that little reroll, which will help. If you want, you can throw it on a noble, and then you're pretty much got a bolt thrower with good bliss skill for 120 points though, with 2 wounds, which is pricey, but throw them in a unit as some wound allocations, and maybe it's something. Maybe some Shadow Warriors. The other option too with this is you could throw it on the champion for the Sisters of Avalorn, because they get 50-point allotment, so you can throw it on them, and I believe their champion is also BS6. And then they also get the extra AP as well for their arrows, so it'd be AP4 instead, which I think is pretty good. So when it helps out the Grand Army, so if you are taking that unit in core, bring in a unit of 30 Sisters plus this, or a unit of 5 to kind of get into the flanks, I think it'd be a lot of fun to through and through, because I think regular bolt throwers are only multi wounds 2 standard.
Yeah, they
are. So D3 is, I think, a step above. Still a chance to roll 1, but still pretty good. Also, AP3 is pretty good.
Yeah,
I think it's a great weapon. I think it could see some play. I'm probably going to be trying it on my list. trying to do something with it. Try getting the flanks and hit a unit of knights or a unit because everyone's running wide these days, anyways. So we good. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this one has for sure has play. I think it's especially valuable in the army you're talking about there in the Seaguard garrison, where you're kind of struggling to get a lot of high strength attacks. I guess for me, the little bit that I would have liked to see is if we are going bolt thrower, I would have liked it to be strength 6. But it's fine. It's still very playable at strength 5. Strength 5 AP3 multiple wounds D3 is just really solid, especially with magical attacks, which it obviously gets. And I mean, the first time I looked at it, I was like, ugh, a 50-point weapon. But then, in my army, a bolt thrower is 45 points and I take 3 of them. So, so I do see the value, obviously. And, my bolt throwers, they are strength 6, but they're hitting at ballistic skill 3, which is a hell of a lot lower than what you get in this army. So, yeah, I think this definitely has play. I don't hate the idea of putting it in Sisters of Avalorn unit. But the only issue I think you're going to run into in that case is just because of the strength disparity, the Sisters will not necessarily want to shoot the same target as this guy at strength 5 with a bolt thrower. But
Yeah.
I mean, still, I think it's still a very usable and a good item. What about you, Andrew?
I think it's good. I'm just not sure where it would like slot in. Like you said, if you want to put it with a sisters unit, it's like, well, that character probably wants to shoot at something else. I was just trying to look and see, like, if you made a purpose-built sort of sniper character, where he would even slot in. So I was trying to see if he would go with, like your ambushing woodsman, or even like shadow hunters, and then just kind of come in off the backfield or like on a flank, and then just try to make those flank shots with him with the through and through. I'm actually, I don't know. I think it's okay, but I think you need to build around it to make it work. And don't the high elves already have a similar item, or am I thinking of wood elves?
They do have another bow, but it shoots. I think it's strength 4, strength 5, and it's 1 shot per your attack characteristic.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, I think 40 points. So it's decent on a noble, or I don't think you would want to take it on a prince.
Yeah, I think this bow is also not bad. For instance, Andrew, like you can put a character on a sky cutter and run around with this guy upgraded with another second bolt thrower. So then you're just putting out a lot of DACA on that little annoying platform that's running around. I mean that could be an option. I think in Danny's Seaguard Garrison, you can also put it in with that big brick of Seaguard that you're
Yeah.
for sure going to have, so.
Yeah. The other thing too,
Yeah.
I guess with the Seaguard list, I know it's not what we're talking about, but the Seaguard Garrison Commander is BS7 instead of 6, so he's hitting on zeros and then the rerolls on a 5. So having a bolt thrower that has a high chance of hitting is great.
Yeah, which will basically always hit is amazing. Yeah. It's good stuff. Okay, shall we move on to the next one? So I'll take the next one. The next one is going to be the Star Lance. So the Star Lance, what we're getting here, sorry, I just flicked off the page. Okay, so the Star Lance, for 45 points, we're getting a strength +3 AP4, magical attacks, strikes first weapon. It's a lance, so obviously it's only used in the first turn of combat. And then it can only be carried by a unit that's mounted cavalry or on a monster. I think this is a very good weapon. Strength 3, AP4 for 45 points. Yeah, I'll definitely take that. I think it's just actually a better version of the Heartwood Lance that the Bretonians have. That one is 50 points, strength 3, AP3 instead of AP4, and it doesn't have strikes first. And people do take that on dukes or or barons mounted on Pegasuses usually. So, I mean, I think it's a very, very playable weapon for 45 points. Depending on how you kit out your prince on dragon defensively, if you do have 45 points, but not enough for like the full 65 that you get for an ogre blade or whatever, or the white sword that you have in this army, I think going for the star lance is a very good option. Your character would be strength 7 AP4 again, which as we've previously, and striking first, which is as we've previously described as pretty badass profile. Thoughts on this one, starting with Andrew?
Come back to me.
Okay, Danny.
All right.
I don't want to
So
check something first.
Okay.
so the one thing I find strange on this, it has strike first. All your combat characters
Yeah.
already have that.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
That's what
So
I'm
like
looking
it
up.
seems, yeah. So the only ones that don't for your characters, so you can put it on your champion, like your Dragon Princess. I think they get 50 points, so you can put it on him. So then you get your champion getting an extra punch. He's 2 attacks, no 3 attacks for the champion. So same as a noble. At strength 6, 8 -4, like pretty decent. But I think also taking this on an archmage, I think would be pretty good because he doesn't have strike first, so it
Yeah.
allows him to strike first. And then if he is illusion,
Doppelganger, yeah.
doppelganger, you're getting doppelganger at strikes first, so your initiative 10 pretty much with doppelganger, which I think is pretty good. And it also makes your second dragon have a little bit more. If you're running a double dragon, you have your prince on one, maybe with an ogre blade, and then you have your archmage with a star lance. So now you have
Yep.
2 of these big dragons running around that you don't really want to touch either. But I think those are going to get pricey, and then I think you still get 50 points for defensive stuff. So I think you're still pretty good if you take it on an archmage.
Yeah, agree with you on that one. Sorry, going back to you now, Andrew. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I think Danny me and him were on the same thought process. It seems weird that it has strikes first because any characters that get it already are going to have strike first. So I was just looking up the stats for the Dragon Princes, and their champion does have a 50-point allotment. So this almost feels like tailor-made for those guys. Otherwise, yeah, like I mean, you're still getting a strength +3 AP4 weapon for 45 points, so that's pretty amazing. On any sort of like dragon character, or if for whatever reason you decide to put one of your like a noble or a prince on a horse, like that's pretty sweet. Yeah, I never ever like really think about the whole doppelganger thing, but this can be actually pretty gross if you get that to go off. 'Cause you're gonna kill a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, even on a prince at 45 points, 20 points for this seat of rebirth, and then you still have 35 points, so you can give him the amulet of protection. The talisman of protection, and then you've got a guy who's 3 up, 5 up, 5 up at strength 7, AP4 on a dragon that's strength 7. Like, watch out! That is a that is a fucking beat stick if I've ever seen one. So yeah, I think. Yeah, it's gross.
The only feels bad with this is it is a lance. So if someone charges you, you just don't
Sure.
get to use your magic item.
Sure. Yes, but
Yeah.
then yes, of course. But yeah, then you're still super survivable and you still have that strength 7
Yeah,
dragon. But yeah, no, you're right. Okay. Let's move on to armor. Let's kick it off with the armor of the stars, Andrew.
Yeah, so Armor of the Stars is a 40-point item. It's for models whose troop type is infantry or cav only. Armor of the Stars is a suit of heavy armor. In addition, its wearer is immune to killing blow. If they are struck by killing blow, they are permitted armor and regeneration saves as normal. If the wound is unsaved, they only lose a single wound. That's okay. I mean, it's a 40-point heavy armor. I don't know how much like of your characters you're gonna have either on foot or as cav to begin with. So again, like I don't think you see that many like princes on a horse, or even less on foot, where this is going to be useful. If you were able to put it on your dragon, it would be like ridiculous. Well, I guess it wouldn't work on your dragon, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, I just don't know how often it would come up where you're going to even want this to begin with.
Yeah.
I guess it's fairly
Yeah.
pointed though for what it does.
Yeah. I agree, but before I go, Danny, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a little expensive. The dwarves, I believe, have something similar to it, but like 25 points. So, and if you really wanted to get rid of killing blow, you could put yourself on a chariot, and
Yes.
then you're at least you're spending maybe, I think the regular chariots, I think 80 points, the Trinic chariot. So then
Mm.
you're paying double. You get extra wounds. You're getting armor. This also locks you out of full plate. So I don't see it being that good. Like I don't see any reason why you would spend 40 points to make yourself immune to killing blow, and then just have no ward, no regen for the most part. Unless, yeah,
Agreed. Yeah, I think the high elves have such a good slew of items, and especially defensive items that they can use, that this just is really won't have a use case in a lot of scenarios. As Andrew pointed out, you don't see a lot of princes or nobles running around on horses, so I mean that sort of removes the requirement for to survive killing blow there. You certainly don't see princes on foot at all. So I don't really see where you'd use it. And then it's not like people really lean into killing blow that much in the game. I find like people put a big emphasis on Monster Slayer if they can get it somehow cheaply that doesn't involve gimping yourself with a terrible weapon. Because obviously, because of how monsters can be hard to kill and how strong they're perceived to be, but people aren't really teching for killing blow that much anyways. So I mean, for 40 points, and as you pointed out, Danny, you can't take a full plate. I'm not really seeing it for this one. Moving on, Danny, over to you for the Golden Shield.
Golden Shield comes in at 30 points. It's a shield. In addition, any enemy models that direct its attacks against the bear during the combat phase must reroll any to hit rolls of a natural 6. So the high elves get to spend 30 points to pretty much get the marker Nurgle. All it really is. Where Chaos Lord on a dragon can spend 10 points for the same thing. And it, doesn't eat into their allotment, their magic item allotment. You could still run it on a dragon, so that your high elf one has it as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to. It's good. But you can still get all your defensive ones. You can still get your a 3+. You can get a 3+, 5+, 5+ with the reroll 6s to hit, and I guess you could just take a lance or a great weapon on your.
Would it be a
dragon.
2-up? The Golden Shield is also a shield.
But 4+. Yeah, it'd be 4+ for your full plate, and then shield would be 3+.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You need the dragon helm, which is armor, which the shield blocks you from getting that.
Fair. Yeah.
So I still see people taking it, because I'm sure people will definitely take it, but I kind of wish it was cheaper, maybe 20 points.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you, Danny, on this one. I think it's pretty decent. Like, it feels bad a little bit that Chaos pays 10 points for it, and for you it's 30 points. But
Yeah.
hey, you get regen saves for 20 points, and Chaos has to pay 40 points for it.
That's
so
fine.
whatever, But you can get a prince on dragon with a 3-up, 5-up, 5-up, and then re-rolling 6s when people do strike you. Remember that your weapon skill 7, so basically everything in the game is only hitting you on 4s anyways, or 4s, sometimes 5s there, but 4s. And then forcing them to re-roll 6s is further reduces the output with a lot of good saves. Then you got 20 points left over to do something else with. So I don't think it's bad. Like, if you want to do a very tanky dragon and do some points denial with him, toss him in the middle of the enemy army, and then have all your shooters, because we're talking about the Chracian Army of Infamy here, having all your shooters plucking away at the enemy army. So basically what Wood Elves does, frankly. I think it's not bad. Not bad at all. I don't hate the item. Is there better picks? Probably, but I think it is viable. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
I mean, it makes whoever's wearing it essentially immune to poison. I don't know how prevalent that actually is, though.
Is it
Yeah.
just in close combat or also from shooting? One sec.
Just close combat.
Yeah, so
Oh,
most
that's
poison will
even
be from
worse.
shooting. Yeah.
Oh fuck, it's way overcosted then. Yeah, coming from like demons and redoing my Chaos Warriors army, like it just feels like it costs a little too much. And like you said before, Kevin, I think there's better ways to spend 30 points to make like a really tanky character. I don't know how much of this is gonna be better than what you can do with like Seeded Rebirth and Dragon Helm and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because of how strong that dragon is and how and what you could get for the points in this army, I'd rather the 3-up, 5-up, 5-up build with the Starlance rather than re-rolling sixes. But yeah, I think it's still viable, frankly. But
All right.
we'll see. We'll see if people play it. Okay. Moving on to talismans. I'll pick up the first one here. The circlet of Atrazar. So the circlet of Atrazar is 55 points. The wearer of the circlet has +1 wound on their profile. In addition, if they're infantry or cavalry, they have +1 modifier to their toughness characteristic. Yeah, this one, like, not bad, but not great. +1 wound is fine, but if you're infantry or cavalry, you already don't have many wounds in general, and I'm not sure that the extra one is like worth 55 points, frankly. Where I could see a little bit of a corner case is, for instance, with the banner that gives +1 toughness right now, you can have a funny situation where you put the banner on a unit. If you don't want to take a dragon at all, you put the banner of +1 toughness on a unit of silver helms, and then have a character in that unit with this item, who's now going to be toughness 5, which is a pretty interesting break point for sure. So I mean, in that kind of situation, maybe, because after that you could still take some defensive items, but frankly, I think in 95% of lists, you're not gonna see this one at all, because of how the game plays right now. What are your thoughts on the circlet here, Andrew?
Yeah, like again, like it's cool, I guess. I don't know. Like it's kind of the same idea where it's like you're putting how many characters are you putting on foot or
Yeah,
on a mount?
not many,
And like
not many.
it's like cool if you put it on a dragon, you got like what, a 10 wound dragon, but
Yeah.
that one wound isn't gonna be, well, maybe it is, but like it's not gonna be like the thing that keeps that dragon alive in 99% of the time. Like sure, there'll be that one game where it's like, oh shit, I finished the game with 1 wound on my dragon, but like that's not gonna be the common outcome if you take this. And just for 55 points, it's a shit ton of points to spend on that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I don't think it's worth it for like just the 1 wound on a monster. Like, this is something, if you're gonna find some world to take it in, it's gonna have to be like on a cavalry unit. And then, as you mentioned, nobody's really taking them. So yeah,
Um,
Danny. Yeah,
For me, the +1 toughness, it's still kind of a fun item to use. I could still see you taking, if you're taking the Chracian BSB, the chieftain. He's 3 wounds. You give him this, he's 4 wounds. He's gonna be toughness 4 with this. You take the new banner, he's gonna be toughness 5. He's still at 20 points. You can still put a Seed of Rebirth on him, so he's got a 5+ regen with 4 wounds and T5. At least he's a little tanky, but you are spending a lot into him. He's going to be like 250 in points. Just because they don't have many cavalry options, I guess, and you don't really want to
none.
throw him on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can throw him on the chariot, but then he's what is he? He's T4 or T5 with a banner and 7 wounds, which I mean 7 wounds is okay. But
Yeah,
yeah,
T5 7 wounds is not a bad profile, but
but
I
he's a
mean,
BSB. He's not in a unit.
yeah,
You can do it. You can do
exactly.
the same thing with the prince. Actually, no, or the noble. I was gonna say the noble, but noble's only got 50 points allotment,
Yeah.
so you can't even take it.
Yeah, because once you factor in that banner, also you're looking at what, like 135 points to bring a mid-level character up to T5.
Yeah.
It's
Not great.
pricey. Yeah, it's pricey.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well spend the extra like 20 points to get core hell at that point,
Exactly. Yeah,
and
yeah,
you'll do some damage.
yeah. Okay, so we're not sold on this one. All right,
No.
perfect. Let's move on. Andrew, can you do the sacred incense?
Yeah, so it is 35 points. And my computer just closed.
Oh, you want me to get it, or?
Yeah, I want. Okay, I can do this. Just when I expand the picture, like the
Oh.
bar is covering the actual thing. Any enemy model that the target hits that targets this character or any unit they have joined during the shooting phase suffers an additional -1 to hit. That's pretty gross when you're putting it on those Sisters of Aralorn.
Yep.
Because now they're -2 to hit and shooting, and that's usually the way you try to get rid of them because it's really hard to lock them down if you're trying to charge them and stuff. So this is actually pretty gross, and I think it's worth the 35 points. I believe that's kind of the only. I don't know what else you would give this to other than like skirmishing units that you really want to keep alive. So maybe you do it on like Shadow Hunters, as well if you're going that route instead of the Sisters. But like everything else, like I don't know if it's worth dumping 35 points just to give them a -1 to hit in shooting. Granted, elves are T3, so they are more susceptible to like ballistic skill shooting, which is usually lower strength, but it'll still probably hurt them pretty good if they're hit. But yeah, I think the best use for this is just Sisters to make them super hard to kill.
Yeah.
And for 35 points, like you're not breaking the bank to get that ability, and I think it's a big enough buff where it's worth it.
Yeah, Danny? I think you're muted.
Oh, there we go. I think it's a great spot as the Sisters. The usually if you're taking them in core, you have your unit of 30. You got your handmaiden, who usually
Yes.
doesn't take any items, so you can throw this on them just to buff
Well,
them.
the Horn of Isha, but yeah.
But that's not even a magic item allotment.
Oh yeah, fair. Yeah, fair. Yeah.
So your sister champion can still take their Lord Master's Cloak, so they still have a 4+ against magic missiles, which is another usual way to get rid of sisters. Now they're preventing half of those, and also -2 to be shot at from range. Means you pretty much have to engage them in combat, which they'll probably get a random shooting, and then they still strike first, so they're still pretty effective. So this really buffs the sisters build.
Yeah, it does, which is the most popular current build anyways right now for Hobbs. So yeah, I think this is a super strong item that you're going to see quite a bit. I think Sisters is an obvious use case for it, but I think even in the armies of infamy, just for instance, we're not talking about them tonight, but the Seaguard garrison, slapping that on your garrison guard commander who's in the big unit of Seaguard to make them -1 to hit is not a bad option. Or in the or in this army of infamy, in the Chracian Warhost, putting it either on a big unit of sisters who you can't obviously take a handmaiden, but on another character you thrown in there, or I think much more likely what you'll see in this army of infamy is putting it on a chieftain that's in a big unit of white lions, because suddenly if your white lions are a -1 to hit, and then after that they have +1 to their armor against shooting, like you could start to really increase their toughness 4 because of the banner, like all that together you could get to increase their survivability quite a bit. it doesn't fix their getting them into combat problem, but I don't think it's a bad choice on them either. So yeah, I think this has got tons of play, and you're gonna see it in a lot of lists for sure. Okay, moving on to the fun stuff. Danny, I think you've got one of the best items here in the book with the Banner of Resilience.
Yes, we talked about it a little bit. A unit carrying the banner of resilience has a +1 modifier to its toughness characteristic. Comes in at 80 points, so it's got to go on a BSB, but +1 toughness on an army that's pretty much just stuck with T3 is one way to actually make their anvils like you're forced to take a unit of white lions, making them T4, makes them a little bit more resilient to be able to swing since they are strike last. Or a unit of Phoenix Guard, like whatever build you end up doing. I feel like people are going to be experimenting with this for a while, whether it's worth it for 80 points. It is pricey. But if you have a unit of like 30 models, you're kind of paying 2 points per model to get that extra toughness. And I still think there's maybe a little play with the circlet from earlier to get to T5 on your BSB, but
Sure.
it does make them real expensive. What do you guys?
Yeah. This is obviously a really, really good item. +1 toughness in an army that's T3 is excellent. What I will say though is, with at 80 points plus taking a BSB, right? So you're looking at 105 points at least just to get this item in. What that pushes you down the road of is it pushes you down the road of taking a single big Death Star unit. I don't think it's worth taking the Banner of Resilience if you're going to take 10 or 15 models in that unit. So it really pushes you into that kind of build. We'll have to see if the lot of the infantrymen improves a little bit in the future so that maybe there's more play to this item. But I think if you're going to lean down some of the other roads that we've seen for high elf players, like shooting, having a big block of sisters, for instance, then you wouldn't put this on them. There's other better banners to put on them. So I think this is if you're taking either a big unit of line guard, or if you're taking, for instance, if you're taking like silver helms, as I mentioned earlier, a big brick of silver helms in core in the Grand Army that are now T4, that really changes the math on them, on their survivability. So I think that's not a bad pick either in that construct. What about you, Andrew?
I'm not as jazzed as you guys about this item. I play a lot of Dark Elves, which is kind of the same. Those armies function well enough being toughness 3, I find. They have enough tools to deal with things. So jumping up 1 point of toughness, sure, it might, change the math a bit on some stuff, but I don't know if it's worth buying a big enough unit to take advantage of this, plus then buying whatever BSB, and then dumping another 80 points on top just to give all of that +1 toughness. Like, I don't know if it's a good investment for a competitive build, just because the army's going to function well enough being T3 anyways. You can probably spend those points better in other places.
Yeah, I guess. But I think when you start to, I think on its own, Andrew, it's too expensive if that's the only thing you're doing to increase the survivability of your white lions. But I think when you layer that with the -1 to hit, with the effect of the lion's cloak, and then you have a mage in there who gives them a ward save and blah 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 blah. Of course you're investing massively in a big Death Star, but I think at that point, it all comes together, and having the T4 is really going to help out. But I think you're right. If you're, as I mentioned earlier, if you're taking a smaller unit, or as you mentioned, if you're just putting this on them, it's probably too pricey.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, that's it. I was agreeing with you.
Okay, perfect. I'll get the next one, the Banner of Lothern. So 55 points. If a unit carrying the Banner of Lothern is equipped with thrusting spears, half of the models in the 3rd rank or file, rounding up, can make supporting attacks for 55 points. I think this is terrible. you'd have to have a unit so wide for this to actually matter. Thrusting spears are pretty garbage. All the units you can take them on are strength 3. So like you're paying 55 points to have an extra maybe 5 strength, weapon skill 4, strength 3 attacks. Like, yeah, no, I don't think it's worth it for 55 points. There's better things you can take, for sure. What are your thoughts on this one, Andrew?
Yeah, like for 55 points, why not just give all the models in the 3rd rank the ability to attack with supporting
Agreed.
attacks? Like
100%.
it's fucking spears. Who gives a shit? Sure, you can buff it up with magic and stuff, but like again, it's already like the only unit that even could take advantage of this in the game. Maybe I'm talking about my ass. Is the spearman? Like, is there any other spear wielding units in the high elf
Don't the
list?
Seaguard also have thrusting spears?
Seaguard
Oh
also
yeah, I
in there.
guess fucking Seaguard.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I take that back a bit, but again, like, why not just let all of them attack? It's still strength 3, AP nothing attacks. Like, it's gonna be good, but it's not gonna be that good unless like you give them a bunch of like magic buffs and stuff. And you're already paying 55.
But then why are you buffing with magic your spearmen? Like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So like again, it's 55 points for, like you said, at best. If you go 10 wide, which is already crazy, you get 5 extra attacks. Like, so what was that? 10 points attack almost.
Yeah.
15 points attack. Like, no, just no.
That's not good.
Yeah, it's bad. The big thing as well, it's 55 points, so it has to go on a BSB.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, so you have to spend the 25 points. It's really an 80-point banner. The other thing is, it would have been good if it wasn't limited to thrusting spears. If it could have went on Phoenix Guard, I could see maybe a bit more because they're strength 4, and if you had the full rank, then you can buff the Phoenix Guard. But yeah, to get 4 to 5 extra strength 3 attacks, it's not doing anything for 55 points. Not great.
No, not great at all. Andrew, back to you for the Banner of Balance.
Yeah, so excuse me. Banner of Balance is 25 points. While in base contact with a unit carrying the Banner of Balance, enemy units cannot reroll any rolls to hit or to wound. However, nor can the unit carrying the Banner of Balance. 25 points. I'm just trying to think how common are rerolls to hit or to wound in this game. I don't think it's gonna come up that much. Like, we're not playing 40k here where everything rerolls to hit and to wound. Like,
yeah,
they've done a pretty good job like limiting that to very few cases. Like, you'll see more like bonuses to hit and stuff rather than rerolls.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're really worried about it, like, it's only 25 points, so that's okay, but I just don't think it's going to come up often enough that you need to invest in being safe from it.
Agreed.
I don't know.
Yeah, agreed.
That's
Danny?
my thought on it.
Yeah. The big thing is, like, if you are fighting something with the Mark and Nurgle, you won't have to reroll your hits because you can't reroll them, which is a bonus. It also prevents. There's a few racial weapons that let you reroll either ones to hit or reroll ones to wound. So it'll prevent those, but like it's usually reroll ones, so it's not a huge thing. It's either reroll ones or reroll 6s. Yeah, it's nothing too crazy. I can see maybe in the future there might be some more rerolls coming in the future.
Maybe.
Then you'd be ready for it, but at the moment, not much.
Yeah, I think it's too situational. There's not a lot of rerolls, as you guys mentioned, so I'm not convinced. The only thing I will say though, if you're playing your buddy and he's bringing Dark Elves, you put this on your big brick to fuck him over because everything is Hatred High Elves and none of it gets their rerolls. Yeah.
Great idea.
What the fuck, bud?
But that one super corner case aside, I think it's too situational.
Oh,
There's
I guess Empire does have some. You can give out
yeah,
hatred and stuff. So I guess there are some cases, but they're not meta-defining changes.
yeah. I mean, like you get which one do you think? Because the inner circle knights will reroll ones, but I mean, whatever. Like,
Yeah, I'm thinking of the priest, warrior priest. I think can give that out. Is it
okay.
warrior priest or one of the other ones? Maybe give out hatred.
Is it hatred? It gives no, it gives multiple wounds
Multi-wound.
too. Yeah,
I'm thinking of the other one. Maybe it's the priest of Ulrich.
yeah. Okay, maybe.
Maybe.
But anyways, it's super situational. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the priest of Ulrich gives. Anyways, whatever. It's super situational. Cool. Don't take it. All right. The next one is the Banner of Confidence. Back to you, Danny.
All right, for 20 points, unit carrying the Banner of Confidence does not suffer the usual -1 to hit, making a stand and shoot charge reaction. It's great. Like I think it's pretty good. It's 20 points, so it's not too expensive. You could take it in a unit of, I guess, Sea Guard would be the big thing. So you get stand and shoot at your full bliss skill, because it's the only thing you're really getting. Still, though, it's just regular bows, so it's nothing too crazy, and you still kind of want to, in a Sea Guard unit, you kind of want the Razor standard. So you're missing that out unless you take a BSB with them.
Yeah.
You can also put a BSB with this in the Sisters unit, but then you're expecting them to get charged, which I don't think you really want to do. You kind of want to make sure they never get charged. So I don't know if there's a case for this. I don't even think you would take it on Sea Guard, because I think War Banner or the Razor Standard's preferred. What about you guys?
Yeah, maybe. Is it me or yeah? I'll go next. So I don't hate it on a unit of Sea Guard. I think if you've got the BSB, having like the banner of which one is it? The banner of
Toughness?
yeah. I think you can. No. I think you can. I give this to a unit of Sea Guard, the banner of confidence. Like not having the minus because they are going to get charged. So -1 to hit. Can you take a magical banner on Sea Guard? I forget.
Yeah, you can take up to 50 points.
Yeah, so
you can
so
take
you
the
could,
Razor Standard if you wanted.
yeah, so you could take the Razor Standard and then in the Army of Infamy have the Banner of Confidence on either the unit or the BSB there to give. So you lose the -1 to hit, and then you also have your Razor Standard plus your all the other buffs that come to that big unit, which we'll talk about next episode. For 20 points, I don't think it's bad at all, right? Because those guys, as I mentioned, will get charged, and then they're hitting at their regular ballistic skill of 4, so it's pretty decent.
Hitting on 3s.
Yeah. So, yeah, Andrew, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's okay. If you're planning to do a lot of standing and shooting, I'm just looking at some of the lists. So, like, it would fit on a unit of Illyrian Reavers because they have a 25 point banner allowance.
Okay. Do they have Fire and
So,
Flee? Probably, yeah.
They don't. I thought they did. I was just looking at their rules.
You think elves would be nimble enough to do that?
Yeah. Or countercharge. Yeah.
I don't think they want to countercharge. Sisters, though, don't they have Fire and Flee?
Yeah,
No,
but
don't. Oh, they can't.
yeah,
take
but with Sisters, yeah, you want to make sure you take that -1 to hit banner instead.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's 20 points, so if you want to try to make it work, like I guess you could. It's not the worst banner you can take. But I think Sea Guard with their 50 point allowance is the way to go.
For sure. Yeah. I think Sea Guard is the best case for this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the last few then. Enchanted items. Yeah, I'll kick it off with the Ring of Fury. So the Ring of Fury is a common magic not a common you can take multiples of it for 25 points. The extremely common, sorry, that's what I was looking for 25 points. The wielder of the Ring of Fury can cast the Hammer Hand spell from the Lore of Battle Magic as a bound spell with power level 2. So I think that is actually a really solid magic item, because being able to just add that little bit of extra damage to basically your unit champions, because most of them will have a 25 point magic item allotment, and then Hammerhand obviously is D3 as 2d3 strength 4 hits at AP2. Like that will do some damage when it goes off. I mean, yeah, of course you could be dispelled like anything else, but still, I like the damage, the little bit of potential damage output. And I think the smaller the unit, the more this adds to the overall value of the unit. So if you have a unit of, I don't know, 5 silver helms or something charging in, like the Hammerhand will probably do as much damage as the unit. So like it's not bad at all. The fact that it's extremely common, you can take it on multiple units. So when you have, even if you're getting dispelled sometimes, when you have 3 or 4 instances of Hammerhand across your army, that's not bad at all. I think the only thing you have to be careful though is like it could potentially become a trap, and that if you start to give it to every unit, it's going to really rack up in points at 25 points a pop. So have to be selective for units that do get into combat and stuff. But yeah, I think it's a very good item, and you're gonna see it for sure. In some number, we'll see what the magic number is that people settle on. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah, like it again, it can be just, but like you said, it's only power level 2. But for 25 points, it is kind of just like a nice little like handful of pocket sand that you throw in the middle of combat. And maybe your opponent won't expect it. If it doesn't go off, like, oh well, it's only 25 points, then like I don't think that should be your whole tactical use of that item, but just having it like sprinkled in like a few like fast moving cav units, like you said, just gives them that little bit of oomph that might help them win combat. So I think it is a pretty decent item for, again, 25 points.
Awesome, Danny.
King?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a great item. I mean, the first thing I thought it was just like 25 points. I can fit 4 of those on a character. Let's just throw them on a horse and throw them in a unit with strike first. Let's go. But my dreams were dashed when you can only cast 1 bound spell pretty much per character. So I was like, all right, never mind. But
That
I
would
could
be
still,
amazing.
it'd be hilarious just to see a cheap prince on a horse.
Yeah.
Just like a Thor's glove of Rings of Fury.
Oh, it's pretty much like what's the glove from
Yeah,
Avengers?
That's it.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
Thor's.
Yeah, that one.
Thanos' glove.
Thanos' glove.
Thanos is-
Yeah,
Yeah.
just do a whole snap. But I can still see you running like it. You take if you have a Death Star, pretty much having like 2 or 3 characters in there, and the champion, you can get 2 or 3 of these, and elves are already pretty fast. So putting 2 or 3 of these out is still pretty good.
Yep.
In a combat phase, so you can still get rid of most of the front rank and maybe not take any wounds back. But I still think I don't know if you'll see that, but I'll see 1 in every list at least.
Yeah, it's just good.
Yeah, and it's good on just silver helms. Just take 5 silver helms with a champion and this item.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably like because they're auto hitting AP2, like probably almost doubling the damage output of the unit.
Yeah, the AP2 is the big thing, I think.
Yeah.
Strength 4, wounding most things 4s or 3s.
Yeah, 3 is a lot of stuff that you'll charge silver helms into. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew, Gem of Courage.
Yeah, for 15 points, it can only be taken by a Chracian Warhost, Army of Infamy. It's a single use, once per game. When required to make a break test, the bearer of the Gem of Courage and the unit may roll an extra d6 and discard the highest result. I don't know about this one. I guess if you're really worried about running away, you would take it, but elves in general already have like a very high leadership. Chances are a Chracian Warhost army would be an army where you would have like a BSB floating around anyway for like rerolls on breaks. Maybe it'd be a little better if it was like all leadership tests or something, but just on break tests, like, I don't know. I don't think it's that worth it. especially with if you're looking at like your white line units, they either come with or have access to veteran to begin with, so they kind of already have this, not this exact ruling, but like help against breaking built in. So like I don't know. I don't see where you'd want this over spending 15 points on something else.
Yeah, Danny.
Like,
Yeah. For me, it's 15 points. You can throw it on a champion as well if you're running Chracian. I guess it has to be in the Chracian army.
Yeah.
You have your white lions in your core. You put this on the champion if you didn't want the Ring of Fury, and just as something in your back pocket, you don't need the BSB then if you're doing this. So then you can have almost a BSB for significantly less, and you don't have to worry about. It's 10 points cheaper than a BSB, and you're not losing the 100 points if you lose the unit. You don't have the chance of losing your BSB.
Yeah, unfortunately, this army has fantastic banners, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the battle banner, which D3, yeah, there's a lot of good banners, so you're probably still going to take one.
Yeah, on my end, I mean, it's 15 points. Sure. Like, I'm not too fussed one way or the other. I guess if you're investing like half your army in a massive Death Star unit of White Lions with 2 or 3 characters in there type situation, spending 15 points to make sure that the turn you lose combat, you don't run off the board or get overrun is probably a wise investment. But I mean, aside from that, it's not like, don't have strong feelings either way. It's a nice little bit of insurance for 15 points. Not sure I would take it, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see somebody put that on a big Death Star unit either. Okay, let's move on to the last 2 or 3 items there. Danny, can you start us off in arcane items with the Vortex Shard?
All right. This comes in at a total of 50 points. It's single use. A wizard may use this item instead of making a dispel attempt. If they do so, the spell is automatically dispelled with no dispel roll required. In addition, all remains in play spells currently in play are dispelled, including spells cast by friendly wizards. It's quite expensive, 50 points, pretty much half your allotment for your Archmage, all your points for your regular mage. It's 10 more points than the sigil that Elves already had, which was an auto dispel. So you're paying more, but you do get rid of all the remains in play. If Sisters of the Thorn were still around throwing down pillars all the time, I would say probably yes, since Pillar of Fire can wreck a High Elf army, since it's strength 3. But since that's been kind of nerfed or removed from the game, I don't think it's as viable. People aren't throwing down. Pardon?
Yeah, it is. It's a big fuck you to like Mortuary Cult.
Are they throwing down a lot of remains in plays though?
Isn't like they put down those like leadership debuffs.
Yeah, I was gonna say that for mainly for vampire counts, Andrew. Like the
Okay.
-2 leadership
Yeah.
stuff that they vortexes that they point down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you would have to, but you have to dispel too. So if they put
Yeah.
down the vortex last, and you don't just use this because you think they're going to cast some other things or more things, you don't
Sure.
get it. But or you can just take the 40-point less item and then stop it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but there's a lot of.
I guess
spells
you can have them cast all their spells, and then when they cast their remains in play, vortex and the shooting phase, and you stop them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like Danny, if Sisters of the Thorn were still a thing competitively, and you were still dealing with 4 pillars of fire running around your army, this would be potentially a really good take into that matchup specifically. But I mean, aside from that, maybe in a few cases where you're like vampire counts is one that comes to mind for me. But yeah, I think there's not enough vortexes out there that I would want to spend 50 points. And most critically, I think use up the slot for an arcane item on my mage or my archmage. It locks you out of stuff like the lore familiar, for instance, if you take this. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure it outcompetes the other items that are available. And then after that, it's a little bit it's a little bit situational because most armies you're going to face are going to put out 0 to 1 vortexes,
Yeah.
realistically. So,
Yeah.
I'm generally not too hot on it, but it could be good in some
But
specific.
this doesn't just dispel vortexes. It's
No,
remains in place spells. So any
yeah,
like hexes and buffs, you're also removing.
Most of those
Yeah,
are only for one turn, though. They're not remains in play.
well, so there's some that are remains in play. Like for instance, the Nurgle spell in Warriors of Chaos. I'm blanking on the name now. That gives +1 toughness remains in play. But the thing is, though, with most remains in play spells, they're actually cast at a pretty low value, and you can dispel them for free in your command phase. So you could just dispel on a 7, like the +1 fleshy abundance, is it called? Yeah, I think it's called fleshy abundance in the Nurgle spell. So I wouldn't really need a 50-point magic item on my souped up level 4 caster to do that most of the time. So yeah, I don't know. Like yeah, I think it would depend on the army. I know you have some remains in play spells with your army, right, Andrew? Like is it word of it's not word of pain, the dark elf spell that got nerfed. Yeah.
Yeah, the vortex.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I still think it's pretty decent. Even just because it's an auto dispel and there's not a lot of those in the game.
Sure.
And I mean, realistically, you can still use this on your turn if you're doing a dispel attempt on any remains in play to begin with. So you can just be like, instead of rolling, I'm just gonna make sure it's gone to begin, so you can do what you want to do on your turn. But yeah, I guess it's not. I don't know. I think it's still worth it.
Okay.
Just for having a guaranteed. I don't have to roll. It just dispels.
But for 10 points less, elves have like the sigil that's 40 points, and it's also an auto dispel, and it's also a very common item.
Yeah.
So you can still get you can get other arcane items with it.
Yeah,
that's one of each, yeah, or a lore familiar and the automatic dispel. Yeah, okay, all right. I think we've talked enough about the vortex.
Yeah.
The Trickster's Pendant. I'll take this one. So the Trickster's Pendant is a single-use item for 40 points. A wizard with the Trickster's Pendant, when attempting to make a wizardly dispel, you use it when you attempt to make a wizardly dispel, pardon me. If you do so, you roll an extra d6 when making the dispel roll and discard the lowest result. If the spell is dispelled, the wizard that attempted to cast it cannot cast any more spells for the remainder of the current turn. However, obviously, if you roll double ones on any of the 2 dice, then you're outclassed in the arts. Fine. So the ability to yeah, I'm not sure about this one. So the ability to prevent an enemy wizard from making any additional other casts is good. Don't get me wrong. Like taken at face value, that's very good. But few things here is it takes up your arcane item slot if you use this thing, and you actually need to dispel the enemy spell. So if they roll I don't know, 10 on the dice and they're level 4 and they count as 14, you're probably still not going to dispel it, and then you're going to waste a 40-point item. So I guess the point is you've got to wait for the right moment to use this item, which may or may not happen when you need it to, depending on what spells your enemy's casting. And then, as I mentioned, obviously it takes that slot away. So I'm not too hot on this.
Do you have to declare you're using this if they roll high?
Yeah, because it's when you attempt to make a wizardly dispel. So if they roll high, then you decide if you use it or not, right? So you can wait for the right time. But if, for instance,
if they roll like shit, and then you're like, okay, I'll use it now. But if they roll high, like, okay, I'll just use my regular dispel roll and save the item for later.
Yeah, like agreed. Except if, for instance, if the spell you want to prevent is like, let's say you were fighting me, the spell you would want to probably prevent is the big bubble of -1 to hit. Unfortunately, that's always the first spell that's cast in my army because that's how the sequence, like the turn sequence, is laid out. So if I get a good roll and you don't care on the first one, you can't use it, and then you don't care too much about my 3 other spells, then it's kind of wasted. So yeah, I don't. I think it depends a little bit on too many factors to be reliable. and then it locks you out from other items. So I don't know. It's good at face value, but I'm not sure when you play it out in games, it's really going to work out how you think it is. Andrew, I know you started there, but any other thoughts?
Yeah, like it's 40 points, so that is a lot. Maybe for this item, you know, I tend to shy away from single-use items that are sort of 30 points plus, just because it's like that's a lot to invest in like a once per game ability.
Mm-hmm.
I do think this might have some play, and even just shutting down someone's magic phase for a turn, like that's a huge psychological advantage on the board too, because it'll throw people off, because all of a sudden they can't enact the plan that they've come up with for that turn, or even the game. So if you use this on like a key turn, it could be like sort of a game changing thing. But like you said, it is super situational. The stars kind of have to align in a certain way for you to get this to work properly. But even if that like opponent does roll high, you're rolling 3 dice, right?
Yeah.
So you do have that like little bit of a better chance to roll higher than them, unless they got like an 11 plus 4 or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's probably better ways to spend 40 points in your arcane item slot, but I don't know if this would be a bad investment. You just kind of have to temper your expectations if you take it.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Danny.
I was just looking it up, and this is pretty much just a dispel scroll because you just roll 2 or 3 dice, take the 2 highest. You're paying double for the ability to turn off a caster. There's always the feel bad because it's single use. You could just roll 3 2s, and then you're doing nothing. Like you can still roll poorly. Like if this auto happened, maybe then, or you just got a straight bonus to dispel instead of a roll. Like you got +2 or +3 to your dispel. I would say it'd be better, but because it's still chance of the dice, you can spend 40 points and it does nothing.
Yeah.
At least the vortex shard familiar auto dispels.
Yeah. You have to also hit the right matchup. Like you have to go for an army that's really ideally that your enemy, they have to depend on their spells. But then if they depend on their spells and they have a bunch of bonuses to cast, then you're probably not going to get it off. You know what I mean? Like if you're into mortuary cults and you're like, well, great, I get 3 dice, but he's like, yeah, but I cast a +8 or something silly, then it's probably never going to work. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe. I'll leave it at maybe. Let's move on to the last one, the Staff of Solidity. Andrew.
Yeah, so Staff of Solidity is a 15-point item. It is also a single use. Once per game, when the bearer of the Staff of Solidity is required to roll on the miscast table, they may choose not to. I don't think this matters that much. If we were talking about like the old 8th ed miscast table, I'd say like this would be a really good item to take because that was potentially super punishing, but the current miscast table isn't the worst. I guess if you're really worried about having your wizard shut down for the phase, this be worth taking, like on a key turn. But again, it's not a common arcane item, so it kind of locks you out of some other choices if that's what you're going for. It's only 15 points though, so I don't know, maybe. I think there's better ways to spend the points, but if you're that super worried about like miscasting and then whatever comes up on the miscast table, take it. You're only spending 15 points. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't think you should probably take it.
Yeah. I just find it's okay. If it was very common, I'd be okay. You can use it multiple times or take multiples. I wrote in my notes just the word neat. It's all right. I wouldn't take it because it's taking up all your arcane item allotment to do potentially nothing. And the miscast table isn't that bad in this edition. Like, if you take the damage, I guess you can hurt some of your own guys. You're not getting pulled into the warp like you were before and just auto dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like my fucking level 4 Greater Demon of Nurgle. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
almost every game.
Yeah.
It's like 500
Yeah.
points. Just
Fun.
So I
Warhammer
don't,
things. Yeah.
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 I agreed with you guys. I think this is nothing to write home about. If you have a caster who you desperately want to protect because he's really important and you want to make sure he can cast his spells, then surprise, he's probably taking the lore familiar already, and you can't take this thing. So, so yeah, neat, as you said. As
Yeah.
you said there, Danny. Okay, so now that we've covered all the magic items, basically we've covered everything. So just before we close it out, are there any final thoughts on how this sort of taking it all together, the rules, the unit entries, the items? What are your thoughts on how the war host will play competitively? Does it stack up to the other Grand Army in the book, which is obviously the Seaguard Garrison? How does it stack up against the Grand Army? That kind of stuff. Start with Danny.
I still think the Grand Army is going to be the go-to for now. I can see still people running the same characters they always have. It's not really going to change your characters. Um, you're, I really don't think it's changing your Grand Army too much. Maybe a few new items. I don't think you're taking any of the new units in your Grand Army. But if you are running the Warhost, I guess the Trace Army, they're gonna could be competitive. Like I still see a Brain Center Archmage, pretty much same build as before. You're gonna have your Woodsman and Core, a block of White Lions potentially, and then Sisters and Rare. And yeah, nothing's much is being changed. But I do like the idea of being able to bring difficult terrain, and even if you brought different sizes depending on the table, because it doesn't say you have to use the same size for an event, and maybe that has to be changed. You can make a really thin piece, long piece, like a round piece, just like, okay, what's the table look like? Okay, I'm going to put this piece down to kind of control how wide certain passageways are for your opponent to force them to have to play a certain way, which I think would be really fun.
Yeah.
Like I find the Trace Army it could be a lot of fun, but I just generally, even with stacking against the Sea Host or the Sea Guard, I still think they're going to be at the bottom. They're going to struggle into most things.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Andrew?
I think I've kind of said this before. It's like I think it will be a good like middle of the pack army, but I think it is going to struggle against like sort of other high speed armies like all cavalists or at least like heavy cavalists. And again, board control just with this army. Like, sure, there's a lot of like skirmishing and scouts and ambush, but you are relying on a lot of foot troops. With your woodsmen, with your white line guys, and like, sure, you can take chariots and whatnot, but you don't want them to move too far away from your battle lines because then they won't be supported. So, even though you do have fast units in this army, the main shit getting stuff done in this army, they need those types of fast moving units, aside from a dragon, needs to kind of stick with those slow things anyways. So I think you're going to have a hard time like picking the battles you want with this list, but I still think it will. There is like competitive play here. I don't know if it's like top tier though, like going toe to toe with Warriors of Chaos or something.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is not a Warriors of Chaos / Bretonnian Exiles / Mortuary Cults type list, for sure. The book in general or the Chracian Warhost. That being said, I think the Chracian Warhost specifically has a lot of play competitively. The more we talk about it, the more maybe I'm just selling myself on it here, but I think it does have a lot of play. I think the Grand Army has definitely seen a buff from the items that sort of came with the book here. For instance, the -1 to hit on Sisters is going to be massive from shooting, is going to be massive towards just increasing the power level of that build. on its own. Stuff like the banner of that increases toughness. Stuff like being able to put reroll sixes to hit on a close combat, kick-ass character. Stuff like the Star Lance. Like there's just good items that I think buff up the Grand Army, give it a little bit of a boost for sure. I think the real question when I look at this book for me is, do you go Grand Army or do you go Chracian Warhost? I'm kind of a little bit hotter, I think, than you guys are on the Chracian Warhost. I kind of see it as a side grade to the Grand Army, not necessarily a downgrade like most armies of infamy. Just because I guess because you could take all the same characters, and I agree. I think it was Danny that said that. Like the build of the characters won't change in the army, and you're still going to take a bunch of sisters. So I guess what the calculus becomes is like, what do you value more highly? Do you value more highly the cavalry that's available to high elves, or do you value more highly skirmisher shooting and a massive area of difficult ground in the middle of the map? So, depending on your play style as a player, as a pilot, depending on some other factors, you may swing one way or the other. I still think, again, as I mentioned earlier at the very beginning, in the fullness of time, probably we'll still see the Grand Army be more taken more often. Also, I think not having to do a massive conversion job on your army is probably going to factor into how often you see this on the tables. But yeah, I really think the Chracian Warhost has plenty of competitive play, and I'm like, if I was playing this army, I'm sure I could do something very interesting with it, and I would be interested in trying it out the list. So yeah, from that perspective, I think it's a success. I think it stacks up very favorably against the Seaguard Garrison. I think this is definitely the stronger of the two armies of infamy. Like unfortunately, some of the bonuses that you'd like, I keep saying you there, but I mean Danny, that you'd like to see in the Seaguard army are actually in the Chracian Warhost. Like you'd love, I'm sure, to get you actually mentioned it yourself, a +1 to your ambush roll, for instance.
Oh yeah.
You'd love to be able to place a massive area of difficult terrain in front of that huge brick of Seaguard, right? So
Yeah, just to make myself a little bit more immobile. I'm going to shoot you more. Have my stuff ambushed. So with chariots and everything, that'd be great. Like chariots, no.
So yeah, I think it's the stronger of the two. So okay, all right. So I think we've covered this. We've covered this all. Before we close out, however, because you're here, Danny, let's take a few minutes, just a few quick minutes to talk about CTC. So Danny's running an event in, I think it's the third week of May, GT here in Ottawa. So you want to give us the details on that?
Yeah, I can give you a quick rundown. It's going to be it's May 24th and 25th, a Saturday, Sunday. It's at the curling club downtown. I think it's the Rideau Curling Club. Tickets just got one on sale, I think a week ago. There's $65 right now. There's an early bird price. So the sooner you get them, the cheaper they are. So I believe in about a month they'll be going up to a regular price. So get them while you can. It's going to be 5 rounds over the 2 days, 3 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. That way people can get out. We're going to keep it. Hopefully we can get to 32, but I'm not going to go past that if we do manage to sell those tickets. But we did run it last year. It was a little hot, so I'll be getting a couple cases of water just to help everyone out. And hopefully by the time the May 2-4 weekend comes, we'll have at least the Beastman Arcane Journal and maybe even the Wood Elves.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have to write in the player pack a cutoff date. But it should be good. We're trying out a new tournament pack as well that Ryan wrote. So trying more the GW style rule of 3 / whatever your army is. So unless if your army has a restriction already in place, you follow that. Otherwise, you go to 0-3. So if you have bolt throwers and they're 0 to 2 per 1,000, you can take your 4 bolt throwers, and everything else is 0 to 3. So it does help, like even Null Army being able to take 6 cannons. Like it will change out how people run their lists.
Yeah, dwarves with 6 cannons. Yeah,
which will be terrifying. So it will change dragon lists, I'm sure. So it'll be exciting to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was at CTC last year. I attended. I thought it was a great event. Like the terrain you laid out was super. It was great. Yeah, I had a good time in general. It's a GT here locally, so especially if you're going to the team event 2 weeks prior, make sure you hit CTC. It'll be a good time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Looking forward to
Okay.
that. Yeah. Again, Andrew, I'm also looking forward to your Can-Hammer team tournament. So I'm for that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm pumped for that one too. All right, good. So let's close this out. So obviously, next episode we'll be discussing the Seaguard Garrison. Thank you, Danny, for subbing in at the last minute there. Ryan couldn't make it, so I'm really appreciative. We're both really appreciative. So thank you for showing up. And that's it for me. Anything you want to shout out, Danny?
No, I just appreciate being invited on the show again. It was always
Yeah,
fun.
you're our first recurring guest, the only recurring guest now.
Perfect.
That's good. Andrew, anything you want to shout out?
No, I think we're good.
All right, perfect. So thank you, listeners, for sticking with us on this one. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you next time to talk some Seaguard Garrison. All right, bye-bye.